What's up, Coach?
Hey, how are you today?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing good. Getting ready to get out and do a little bit out in the world for a little bit for a change. I think here in Rockford we're opening up on the 29th, which is today.
Yeah, it looks like there's some more ability to do more things. So restaurants are able to do some stuff and patio service, I think, if I recall correctly from what we've been told.
Right.
You actually got forced into another full day of quarantine, though, because you got something going on outside. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, unfortunately they're sealing the parking lot and we have to wait 24
Man,
hours. My car's in the wrong spot, so I'll be here another 24 hours, but that's okay.
yowzas, yowzas. That's all right. We have an awesome guest today that a good friend of both of ours from a long time ago, and I got to know him in when I was living in Omaha, Nebraska, and then I've with my stuff to the national booth and stuff like that. I've gotten to see him a bunch of other places too, and gotten to be pretty good friends. So, with no further ado, we will add Mr. Chris Schlemer into the show. Hello, sir.
Hey there, man. What's up, guys?
Hey, nothing much, man. Just another day and another day of quarantine, and that wonderful life of doing hardly anything other than remodels.
Oh man, I feel sorry for you guys. With it's the crazy thing we're seeing out here. Out here in Planet Utah, as I like to refer to it. I've been out here, a decade coming up. Well, yeah, it'll be a decade in October. But out here we've been very fortunate, I guess, because our governor sees it a little bit differently. So, the storm headquarters here actually didn't. We didn't really slow down because we've still been making balls for Asia and stuff like that. I mean, obviously the United States market's taken a big hit, big toll. But, for the most part, I think I was telling you guys a little bit earlier, I came back from a trip and, I was had to self-quarantine because I got sick. And again, it was a combination of a little everything because, I went from Utah to, Mega Bowl was actually in Virginia, but I made the circle. I actually flew into Baltimore, made it over to see Andy Brenneman over at Bowler Supply in Pennsylvania, made it down to Virginia, then back up to Maryland to hang out with Mike Sinek for a little bit before coming back. And, in that time span, the temperatures I experienced were 44 degrees to 77 degrees. So that with traveling across country, obviously my sinuses and everything got jacked. And, when I came home, I actually called the doctor and I said, hey, here's what I got going on. And we went through the CDC checklist or whatever. And like, well, you need to 14 days. Cause I pretty much had everything going on except for, I had the stuff in my chest and the lungs and everything. And the only thing I didn't have was a fever. And they told me to watch that, which I did. And I got over the cold part of it probably within those first 14 days, but the chest cold, the deep congestive stuff went away. Probably 5-6 weeks. But, anyway, I've been back here in the office now. A lot of people here in the office have been here pretty much the whole time. I got back about 3 weeks ago now. We've just been grinding away. It's catalog season and all this other stuff. And, the entire state of Utah is actually, we only had five little counties that were not considered yellow yet. We're doing a color system here. And the governor I think he changed 3 more of them today. So we've only got like 2 orange spots left. Everything else is yellow. Some are going to start going to green here next week. So, we've been fortunate, and obviously some of you guys, where you guys are in Illinois, I got all my family's down in Southern Illinois, outside of St. Louis. So I hear all the craziness that you guys get to deal with all that, and our sales reps, we keep track with those guys, and it's just interesting, all the different parts of the country, how everything's so different. So that's really been kind of the thing that we've been working on trying to digest. It's so different right now. So we're just gonna keep grinding away. That's all we can do.
Hey, did you, you had all the symptoms. Did you decide to go get tested or anything?
I did not. So we're actually there for a little bit. We were in one of those states that had the most tests in the United States. And it was one of those things that when I was sick, it was during the time of, man, if you had to have all those symptoms in order to go get tested.
Right.
And then it kind of got to a spot where we actually had some other companies here in Utah that created some different test options They've done the stuff with not only just a regular test, but then the antibody test as well. They got one of those too. It turned into it got to a point where it was like I was sick, I couldn't really go, and then all of a sudden it was like in a matter of days it was like switched the other way, and it's like, oh, well, now we're at the point where if you have one symptom, you can go get tested.
Oh, wow.
But the reality is, I mean, I guess, well, I can say it that way. The reality is, we're at here in Utah, we're over 110,000 tests. We've got over 8,000 confirmed cases. There's, I don't know, 4,900 of those that have, officially been cleared and healthy. We've got like 105 deaths or whatever. But the death average is almost 75 years old for those 105 people.
Yeah.
So it's, in essence, in other parts of the country have not been as fortunate. We know that, there's been other characteristics and younger people and other different things, like I said, here in Utah, we've been fortunate and, and now, Nevada and other places too are kind of going that same boat. I mean, Vegas is opening next week. It's going to be interesting there to see how that all shakes out because, we're hearing that not all casinos are going to open. People are excited there to get back bowling. There's already some tournaments going on. We had our salesman, Lee Up, was just in Arizona. And he said, well, this past weekend they had a tournament. They had 280 entries at the tournament. So there's parts of the country where bowling, they've been bowling league here for almost 4 weeks. And the Salt Lake City city tournament's been going for this weekend will be the third weekend. And then they got 2 more weekends yet. And most of the squads they're doing a social distancing deal like every other pair. But other spots where we're seeing some of these tournaments pop up, man, they're just gangbusters back to normal. So,
wow,
it's pretty crazy. We had a trios tournament that we were set to do right about when everything kind of got called for us to go to quarantine, and we postponed it. And I just got notification from Tony Hall, our manager. I think you might remember Tony. And
I've known. By the way, I've known Tony. I've known Tony longer than you have. I've known Tony since I was a kid, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He was the one that hired me.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries. Tony Hall actually hired me to work player services on a ladies tour back in the late 80s.
Yeah, he had talked, I think, last week a little bit about that, so that was cool.
Mm-hmm. I've been around, man. I'm like old now and stuff. I mean, I'm not as old as Coach, but I'm getting there because he doesn't age. What's that?
How old are you now?
I am. How old am I? I'm 43. I'll be 44 this year. Sometimes you got to think about it. Age is only a number, man. It's like, is that really the age I am? I'm, 43 going on like 21, I guess. I don't know.
A bunch of young guys there.
That's good.
I know, right, Coach?
So yeah, we were just talking yesterday, actually, or the day before, about rescheduling potentially to get people to come back into the center. And obviously it's not the normal time we were going to do the tournament, but we hope that people would pop out and want to be a part of it. But
right.
It's hard to think that people, I think these people are itching. We've been out since March.
You guys have been in a different deal. You guys have been under lockdown. And that's really the whole thing. I mean, even when we were at our worst here in Utah, there was only a couple spots. The first place that got hit here was Park City. And that was where, I'm sure it made national news, the Rudy Gobert thing with the Utah Jazz, the two Jazz players who got it. So Rudy had friends and family. Obviously, a lot of people come into Park City to ski. And so that's really kind of how that all started. In Park City, at the time in early March, we were still getting plenty, we had plenty of snow and we had people from around the world here and a lot of Europeans. So that was a hot spot. But Maine, you get up here where we are, we're about 65 miles north. And there's been, I think, like up here where the office is in Brigham City, Utah, I think confirmed cases in Brigham City, I think is 1, maybe 1 or 2.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like night and day, even just an hour apart. better,
Yeah.
so it's just been a unique type deal. But yeah, I mean, even at that point, it's still you don't have to wear a mask here. I mean, like last week I did pop in to get a haircut somewhere and they required you to wear a mask, so if businesses post that you need to wear a mask to get in, obviously put one on and you can go in. But a lot of stuff, grocery store, stuff like that, it does get the social distancing measures, but you don't have to wear a mask if you don't want to. It's kind of been that way the whole time. So
yeah, we've been kind of stuck doing the mask thing, I think, pretty much for most of the retail places you go to. I've kind of wondered what it was going to be like. I ended up just shaving, like having my wife shave my head for haircut. I'm like, I don't want nothing to do with having to sit here with long hair down to here.
Oh yeah, well, you guys see my mohawk grew out, and I finally the sides. I mean, so you see the color. Let me get it right here. So you see that color grow out. I got my color the day before I left on my trip, so that was March 10th. So I've got almost an inch and a half of hair growth. So when I went in, I couldn't get into my normal girl, and there happened to be a place close to my house, and I had to put a mask on the whole thing. And they're like, "Yeah, what went on?" I go, "Like, can you shave this?" I said, "Leave this out," because I've shaved my head once in my lifetime. I have the worst shaped head. My parents dropped me on my head I don't know how many times as a kid. So I did it once, and I'm like, yeah, lucky for me, I still got plenty of hair and it grows fast and everything like that. But I'm like, yeah, I can't shave all of it because it looks,
Well,
it looks like a bad fruit.
Once you guys go back in the old days, I'm going for the ponytail with the George Carlin look. I think that's me.
Yeah, there you go. Grow it out. Get the moulet going. A little Kentucky waterfall. Like it.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that's funny. I was wondering how they're going to do the haircuts with the having to wear the masks. It's kind of
Hey, actually, I just did it. Like I said, last week it was pretty easy. I had a mask. Obviously, the girls, all the stylists where I went, they all had a mask on. And those like to get my sideburns and stuff. Everything else was good, but she actually took the earpiece off, did the sideburn real quick, put the earpiece back on, and everything else was pretty easy. I mean, I was in and out of there in 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Wow, that's good. That's good to hear, Lee. It's good.
Yep.
Coach, we got some questions to ask Mr. Schlemer.
Uh-oh. Hopefully, are they multiple choice? Because I didn't study. Like, how does this work?
All of the above. I don't know.
All of the above.
Yeah. The hard ones when you got to get two, A and D, or C or A. So those are the tough ones. But no, we're going to start off with you, buddy. Here, we always like to ask our guests is how did you get started in bowling, bro?
Oh, wow. What's funny is I've told this story a few times over the years, but not too many people really know because, what's funny is as my career's morphed, like we were discussing earlier, me knowing Tony since I was a kid, drilling balls and everything like that. And I actually get hit up occasionally. Kids are like, "Hey, I want your job. What school do I go to become like you?" And I'm like, "It's called the School of Life." That's kind of how it works. Honestly, for me, bowling, I never honestly thought bowling was going to be a career because it was one of those things. I didn't start bowling until I was 14 years old, and my dad had bowled when I was younger. I'm the oldest of three kids. Actually, four now. I got a half brother as well. He's a lot younger and whatever. But my old man would actually bowl, and my mom bowled. And like we would hang out in the bowling alley. But I always played basketball or baseball or whatever else. And for me, bowling happened because of multiple injuries. I had a knee surgery. Let's see, when I have knee surgery, I had orthoscopic when I was 14. Right as I was getting up, it kind of helped push the way to bowling because I had orthoscopic from playing other sports and rolled ankles and bad ankles and all and bad knees and all that stuff. And bowling was one of those things that was a less impact for me. And I kind of got into it and got pretty good at it the first year. Within a year, I went from I think it was kind of like everyone else. We see the story, and Coach, you've been a part of it. Whenever you help somebody who's beginning, starting out, and see them progress, quick and how they get hooked and wrapped into it. I got into it pretty quickly. Within that first year, I think my average started at, I don't know, it was like at 100 in the 100 teens, 120. And by the end of that first league season, and I was using, and again, because I'm old enough, I don't know if, Drew, I don't know if you're old enough, but my ball that I used that first year to increase my average was a yellow dot. I had a plugged yellow dot from one of my dad's buddies. And then he gave me a U dot. So then I was like really pumped. But I was averaging like almost 170 within that first year. And, from then just kind of bowling and hanging out with some buddies that bowled. And then, God rest his soul, actually, the gentleman, he passed away a couple years ago. The guy taught me how to drill bowling balls, Randy Lombardi. I'd hang out in the pro shop and he's like, hey, you want to learn how to drill ball? I was, 16. I'm like, yeah, 15. I was probably 15 because I was bowling quite a bit, like on weekends and stuff. And he's like, hey, you should learn how to drill balls or whatever. So I did that. And then, one of my first jobs I was working in a pro shop in Bullhaven Lanes, north of St. Louis in Alton, Illinois. And from there, man, I was just grinding and I was hooked. And, once I graduated high school, I was going to school I went to ITT Tech across the river, but I would stop at Grand Prix Bowling Supply, pick up equipment for the pro shop sales and all that stuff, and then it's like things kind of opened. And then I met Brian Birch, and then he was trying to get me a job moving to like Chicago to run a pro shop. And then he goes, hey, he called me one day. He goes, hey, back in St. Louis, my nickname. So Schlem kind of morphed on my tour life. But everybody back home knows me as Stuff. Because that was a nickname my dad gave me as a little kid because there was always so many Chris's, somehow I got that name and it's stuck. Still to this day, people still call me Stuff. Birch calls me. He's like, hey, man. He goes, what do you think about drilling a ladies tour? And I'm like, well, hey, man, I think that sounds like a cool idea. Because the tour stop came to St. Clair Bowl there in O'Fallon, Illinois. So that was in the late 90s. And, I worked with Sean Morris and Tony Hall. And, that first week I drilled balls and we sat down about halfway through or 3/4 of the way through that week. And Tony goes, well, I don't know what you got going on, but job's yours if you want it. And I'm like, okay. So I went to drilling balls on ladies tour and still running the pro shop there at Bullhaven. And then it kind of just came more from there. So it was kind of a wild little ride, and actually what's funny, I forgot to throw in there. Once I graduated from ITT Tech, I actually worked a job probably for about 6 months, 7 months, because I went to school for drafting. And so I was actually working for a company close to where I lived in St. Jacob, Illinois, that I actually was drawing circuit boards. So that's what I was doing for a little bit. Circuit boards for small appliances and different stuff, like for Sunbeam and different things. We had different accounts. And that just kind of, it wasn't jiving so well. And ended up back in the pro shop, and then all that other stuff happened. I forgot that little jaunt. I did have a small jaunt in there where I kind of stepped out, but then stepped right back in, and been here ever since. So,
Wow, we're really fortunate that you made the decision to be in bowling with our family, which is a super deal here. I'm really glad you're with us.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and that's the crazy part. What was funny is I'll never forget my grandfather, my mom's dad. He passed away years and years ago. But when I was a kid and, was doing the pro shop thing and going to school, and he came up, my grandfather, he was always big on me playing sports, because neither my mom's two brothers were big into sports, but I played baseball. My grandpa played semi-pro baseball. And so I played baseball, basketball. He was always, oh yeah. Well, then I got to bowling. He's like, I don't know about this bowling stuff. That's what was kind of, he was old. He was in World War II. He's like, this bowling stuff. I don't know. Well, he came to the pro shop one day. I'll never forget it. And he hung out. I was busy too. I was slammed. It was like a Friday. And I want to say I was busy for like a nonstop 2 hours. And I had the gamut. I had some of the senior bowlers come in. I had some younger couples come in, the whole deal. My grandpa's just sitting there. And he goes, you know what? I think this bowling thing is going to be pretty good for you. And I'm like,
nice.
Wait, what? Totally caught me off guard. So, but it was pretty cool.
Wow, one of the reasons I got into bowling is I tried out some football and basketball, and I was a little thin, skinny guy. I figured I didn't want to have a contact sport, so bowling was it, buddy, and tennis.
Well, as you see, I'm not exactly. I'm built like your typical bowler, but obviously being just under 6'5", and I was a lot skinnier when I was younger. So I played basketball all the way till hell into my junior year of high school, and baseball till about the same. Like I said, and then having the knee injuries and all that stuff. Right. Orthoscopic was kind of the, I never got into football because my mom was like, oh, you're going to hurt yourself. I'm like, well, hell, I got hurt enough as it was playing baseball and basketball. I was guaranteed I would have got hurt playing football. But
sure.
So we want to know here. I'm always been interested, Chris. How did you get started to work for Storm, and when was that?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. So May 1st, so this May 1st, I've actually been with Storm now 19 years.
Wow.
I started May 1 of 2001. And so my career path, back in the day, we already talked about Tony Hall and the ladies tour. I drilled balls out there for about a year and a half. And, prior to that, I had already, back in my pro shop days, I already worked with, there were some local guys that bowled some regionals and some different stuff. And then, Coach, you probably didn't, I don't know if Andrew, but Coach, you probably know Don Scudder. You know Don Scudder out of Cincinnati? So Scuds, and what's funny is Scuds still, Himmler texted me, hell, it was probably, I don't know, it was before the pandemic. It was probably like February. He's like, hey, and he actually gave me Scuds' number again. He's like, hey, Scuds, came in, we drilled a ball, and he goes, I remember that kid. He goes, I drove 5 hours to go have that kid drill me a bowling ball. And, so I had kind of built that reputation. I had guys, I had the Scuds and a couple other guys came from Cincinnati. I had some guys that were driving from at the time where I had these two guys that came down from, they were up in, I want to say Minnesota. And like they had family or something in the area. And the one guy had come in the shop and all next thing you know, they showed up in the shop one day. And my boss, the guy, actually, you still know, Bill Netzhammer, he helped teach me how to drill and stuff too. And Dave Turner and those guys were like, I was out, I think, with one of the guys on the lanes and they go, hey, the guys from Minnesota are here. And I'm like, what? I had no clue. I'm 17 years old. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, you're just going to drill in balls or something. I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, I mean, that kind of stuff started happening. I had guys driving hours at a time to come have me drill stuff for them. And, I started drilling the ladies tour. That morphed into, I was a tour rep for Visionary for a year on the ladies tour. Because I grew up with all those guys in St. Louis, the Wonders family. And John and those guys were, Visionary was kind of up and coming, and they've been on the ladies tour predominantly. They made a few shows. They all also they were trying to get a couple guys on the men's tour. That never really panned out because it didn't really fully commit to the men's tour. So I tore up for Visionary, and, I'd been around for a while, and actually it was kind of one of those things like West Pie, and I can't remember, I think it was Hank, because with working on the ladies truck, obviously when the manufacturers back in the day, there wasn't a tour rep there wasn't a dedicated tour rep for the ladies tour. So whoever there was times there was salesmen, there was whoever was close, like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm so-and-so. I run a bowling center 2 hours away. They told me to come over and help the ladies out, So it was me and Sean helping the ladies out, basically kind of tour repping. And in Brunswick, same kind of thing. And at the time, when I met Hank and Tammy, Tammy was his previous wife back in the day. She was on Brunswick. And then when Hank got hired in at Storm, because Hank started a year before I did. So Hank got hired in at Storm after, his career, and he'd gone through, run the booth. We worked at Columbia booth and did a bunch of stuff, had a pro shop there, Stonehenge in Akron. So those guys were I was one of the guys that got interviewed. With the funny story, here's the list of guys that interviewed for the spot in 01. Because Sean and I had always talked about it. I said, man, you want to do this the whole time? You want to be a rep or work for a company? He goes, I like to, and this and that. And so in 2001, when I came out to interview, I was the last one to interview, but they had already interviewed, I can't remember the fourth guy, but they had already interviewed Sean Morris. They already interviewed Chad Murphy. So this was before Chad even went to Columbia. And then they interviewed, I can't remember the third guy, and then there was me. And so growing up in St. Louis, and, Bill Supper was here at the time, and it's funny, it still comes up, and there's a lot of Schlem highlights that come up in a lot of stories because I've been around for a while now. Like the fact when they hired me, I wasn't old enough to rent a car. And so we had to work that out to find, at the time I could only rent with, who the heck was it at the time? One of the rental car companies. I can't remember, but I had to only book through them because I had to pay like an extra $5 a day because I was only 24. But the interview with me coming in, they said the selling factor was, they go, okay, P. Weber has a situation in the bar and this and that, how do you fix it? And I'm like, well, it depends on the situation, but odds are I'll just pick him up, throw him on my shoulder, carry him out, and we're done. And still to this day, so Dave Sims, Supper's no longer here, but Dave Sims and even Bill Chrisman, they still like to tell people that story. They're like, yeah, the only reason we hired Schlem is because something went down. He was just going to take care of the guys and just get them out of there. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I was bigger than everybody. It didn't matter if it was Weber or if it was Robert Smith or Himmler or whoever. I just picked them up. Let's go and be done. So. But yeah, so that was kind of the funny deal. So anyway, yeah, so Hank, they had hired Hank the year before. He had tour reps. He'd come out. He was doing some stuff. And actually, well, and during that time, Pat Dugan. I'm sure Coach, you probably know Pat Dugan. Pat was tour rep for the ladies tour.
Yeah.
Hank was in the office. He became the Roto Grip guy after his year of tour repping, and so they wanted a tour rep. To kind of whatever. And Hank and those guys were like, man, they go, this kid's, he's been around. I actually helped Visionary secure their first win on the ladies tour. Mike Sinek actually sent me a text the other day. It was Debbie McMullen won in Florida using a Visionary ball. And even Timmy Mack, he likes to tell that story too. They're like, man, this guy, he tour rep when he was working for Visionary and they had like 2 balls and he got a lady to win. And she was super down and in, but we got everything lined up and it worked out. But, anyway, yeah, those guys, like I said, I interviewed, and yeah, here we are 19 years later.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no kidding. That's where he goes, man, it feels like like you weren't, what's funny is there's still people that go, hey, you're the Storm guy. I see, still to this day, like even I was just in Virginia at the Mega Bowl, and I was hanging out with somebody, and one of the guys bowling came up and was like, hey, man, it's a pleasure to meet you. The Storm guy, man. I see you on TV all the time. I'm like, man, if you're seeing me on TV all the time, you are watching reruns because I haven't been out there since like 2011. And he's like, no, all those times, And I'm like, okay, well, here's the deal. It used to be the running joke with me and Chuck Gardner and even Jeff Carter, because Carter was out there at the time. It was a deal of there was one stretch where Carter goes, man, I'm going to put you on the ballot for Player of the Year. And I'm like, the hell are you talking about? He's like, well, it's a coin toss between you and Chuck on who makes the most shows, but you've made like 17 shows in a row. Like nobody's done that before. Like you've got to be Player of the Year. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Shut up. Yeah. So I think that's why, that's what I'm saying is Jory Peterson, I need your shirt. Actually, so this is a Cool Wick shirt. I designed this with Cool Wick. And they're working on skirts. I don't know if they're doing leggings yet. Last time I talked to Cliff, they're working on that. But I know you can get this jersey because this is a print I collaborated with them to create. So they do have it. So you can buy it on coolwick.com. And then the leggings, I think, are going to be coming here shortly in the future. But I believe you could probably get a skirt at this point in time to match it. So
very cool.
Yeah.
There you go. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's what I was doing.
I've been around, like you said, Coach, you've been around a little bit longer than I have, but yeah, just you kind of blink your eyes and you're like, oh yeah, I wasn't. It's kind of like I saw something on Facebook, I think earlier, like, oh yeah, can you believe 1980 was 40 years ago? And I'm like, wait, what? And did one of these deals, and I'm like, huh? Yep, I was alive then. Okay, yeah, this is how this works. Okay.
I never realized we were the same age.
You thought I was much older?
No, I don't know. I just never knew what your age was, so I was like, I don't know how old you are. And so
Gotcha.
like, when you're doing the remembers of bowling balls and stuff like that, I remember those, and I remember like the Pink Hammer coming out. I remember like some of the other stuff that came out at that time. Like I think one of my first purchase balls was like a Brunswick Rhino that was black and orange writing.
Oh yeah. And then Mike, once, because we were in that time, like I said, I told you about the yellow dot and U dot, and so back in the day, because we used to, they still have them now. They back when we had archways and gateways there in St. Louis, and so I bowled with a lot of the Wonder Boys, Jason, Josh, and Jason, Jimmy, and John Jr. kind of a little bit older, but those couple guys, we were Mr. Wonder, John Sr. would actually sell balls. And so, I had like a purple hammer and a burgundy hammer. Like those were like my new hook balls. Like, I'm like, whoa, like what we do now, what I've been a part of here with the technology advancements. And sometimes that's like, when you take that step, you're like, whoa, that's a big step. Like, holy cow. going from a UDOT to a purple, original purple sanded hammer, not the one that's been out the last handful of years. Like we're talking back in the 90s.
Hey, back in the day.
It was a big difference, back then.
Yeah, you're talking about back in the day. You young guys, I go back to Manhattan Rubber, so there you go. That's going back in the day.
See, I wasn't going to go there. I mean, we were just playing along with it, and you're like, "Whoa, back in my day."
Hey, you're talking about the tours, the men's and women's tours, and all the years that you've been out there. But I always wanted to know what were some of your most challenging responsibilities that you had as a PBA and PWBA national tour rep?
There was a lot of challenging, I think a lot of challenging situations, a lot of challenging times over the course. I was and that's the other part too. The crazy thing, and it's different nowadays, obviously, but when I started in 2001, we had the ladies tour full swing, the senior tour full swing, and the men's tour. So those first handful of years, I was on the road 40 to 42 weeks a year with all those tours just nonstop. I mean, again, I'm not married, no kids, whatever. So I'm like, okay, hey, we need you to go here. All right, sweet. And if I had to detour between stops, or hey, if I had a little window, they're like, hey, can you go here? I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I was doing that those first few years, but getting those challenging times, I think the biggest thing for me was there was a lot of situations, both on and off the lanes, and I think it turns into being a tour rep is in a lot of aspects, it's like a caddy, but it goes a step farther in the fact of at the time, because I went through both transitions of, when the new PBA regime started, it was no coaching. Hell, at one point in time, they were trying to not even let us in the building. So you kind of had to strategize and do stuff, whatever. But then we got back to repping again, and you're there shot for shot the best you can, or watching from distance, because you got so many players scattered across. But it's just, there's so many aspects to it. I think from being a tour rep, being a psychologist, being a friend, being a confidant, because in some cases there's situations that, there's things that are going to happen in life that I shouldn't have to deal with, but I'm going to deal with that because I'm also that person's friend and trying to help them with whatever we can, because it's clearly that there's that situation that's distracting them from bowling, or, whatever's kind of, or bowling's causing something else in their personal life. And so there's just a lot of aspects that got wrapped up in it. Just a lot of, situational stuff. And that's, luckily, I guess for me, I grew up kind of quick anyway. My parents, luckily my folks divorced. When they divorced, I was like 12. I'm the oldest of three. But so I kind of was, I kind of grew up a little bit faster. And so that's why most people always just assume that, hey, I'm older, and, even when I started tour repping, they're like, oh yeah, da, da, da. And then, when I started meeting people, more people in the industry, and they're like, and we have conversations, and they go, wait, how old are you again? At the time, I'm 26. And we're talking, these people are, some of these folks I'm meeting at the time, they're in their 40s or whatever. And they're like, man, I guess you've been doing this and that. And I'm like, yeah, well, I started when I was 3. I wish I could, I wish I could say I started that young, but yeah, no, I think it's just one of those things of just kind of growth and aspect of learning. And it was really kind of the big thing in coaches, when you work with players of all skill sets, and, and lucky for me, I kind of was fortunate because I had the training grounds of the ladies tour, because I wasn't a company rep, I worked player services, but we also, Sean and I at the time also repped. There was times, a lot of times, like Columbia track stuff. At the time, AMF stuff, these companies weren't always sending a rep out. So we're on TV shows, we're helping players, and so I learned that pretty quickly. Like, oh, hey, here's what I see ball motion wise, layout wise, let's change surface. Back in the days before Avalon, when we had, and coach, this Scotch Brite, and you had the sneaky stash of lane screen in your other pocket just in case. You always had that. When we were trying to hit flares in certain, we were scuffing flares in random spots to make balls do different things, and it was just so many different trials and tribulations, I guess. But anyway, back to your question. I think it's the deal of, just all the different aspects. I think it's I can pinpoint both on and off the lanes. There's a lot of different things that have happened that it's just, and again, it's just part of life, I think. And I think that's I think that's a big thing. When I meet people that are sometimes they go through struggles or they're having this or that, and sometimes it boils down to something as little as confidence. I'm like, well,
Right.
you threw that shot really good, and they're like, wait, what? Like you catch them off guard with it, and then as soon as somebody else recognizes it and whatever, it's like boom, everything just opens up. So I think there's so many aspects and so many different things. So I think it's hard to pinpoint.
I think there's a lot of times as a coach and all the coaches out here watching this, what to say, the right thing maybe to say at the right time, to be very careful that you're going to be careful of what you do say in the moment of truth.
Correct. Yeah, because that's where we're getting into the, it's funny, and I'm sure you guys probably know Dr. Dean.
Good friend.
Good friend. Yeah. One of the first times I met Dr. Dean was in Reno. And we got to talking about something. And actually, I was in Reno for a short time because once the ladies' tour went away, there wasn't much going on, and I actually went and helped in a ladies' booth the one year, like in the early 2000s, and that's when I first met Dr. Dean. And I'd already been tour repping and stuff, and he came up and we started talking, and he kind of shadowed me for like a few days, and he's watching this and watching that, and he goes, man, I got to ask you a question. I'm like, yeah, what's up? He goes, so where did you get your psych degree? And I'm like, what? He goes, your psych degree. He goes, I see all these different things because, he's a full-blown psychiatrist. So he's going through different stuff and whatever. And he goes, oh, you're dealing with Weber and you're dealing with Duke and you're dealing with this guy and that guy. And this is before Belmont even came along. You're dealing with all the, Himmler and all these different guys. He goes, so many personalities. I said, yeah. So that's the key. I said, because when Pete's in the heat of battle, what I say to him is totally different than what I say to Norm Duke when Norm's in the heat of battle, which is totally different than what I tell him when he's in the heat of battle or a situation. If they come to me asking a question or it's in a, hey, how do I get in their head to help them push past this, or can I have an answer or give them multiple answers? I said, yeah, you got to. It's very situational, and it was pretty funny. We became friends pretty quick, and then he started coming hang in the booth in Reno. He's like, hey, I was thinking, I got a question for you. And then a couple of days later, he popped in. He's like, you busy? I got another question for you. I'm like, dude, all right, yeah, no problem. But like I said, we've gotten to know each other over the years, and it's pretty cool, chat with him. And then even seeing, and Coach, I don't know if you've gone as far as with him, seeing the other aspect of it, like when he's helping people that are not bowlers, talking like to other athletes or to just regular people. Because it's the same thing. It's a mental capacity. There's a mental understanding and like, how does this person work? How do I communicate on their level? Because you're right. There are trigger words, whether it triggers something good or triggers something bad, and you got to know which way it goes. So
right.
Yeah, there was plenty of times, and it was again the confidence thing. There's times where it didn't matter. I mean, I was very fortunate too. Even on my senior day, the funny thing is I was the first guy to ever meet Tom Clark before he became what he is now. He came to Manassas, Virginia. We're the senior tour stop, and Mark Roth had just turned 50. He comes in and he tugs my shirt and he goes, hey, Tom Clark, USA Today. He goes, can I ask you a question? Because he saw me talking to Mark, and he goes, hey, what's it like working with Mark Roth? And I'm like, kind of looked at it. I'm like, well, he is a living legend. I said, he can't do the things he once could do. And even at that point in time, he had a unbelievable career on the regular tour. And then once, in that time when he's a free agent and throwing a lot of our stuff, I said, it's still helping him manage how ball change direction front to back and side to side. I said, because he's still not a fan of reactive resin after all these years. I said, there's a lot of this and that and whatever. And, Dick Weber was out there and everything. And he started asking these questions. I said, what are you? He's like, well, I'm here to report this and that. I said, well, first off, let's get you a credential. And he's like, okay. So I took him to the PBA office. I'm like, hey, can you help this guy out? He works for USA Today. And they're like, yeah, thanks, Schlem. We got it. I'm like, okay, good. Because I got to go watch guys bowl. Like I kind of pawned him off on the PBA. But, but it's the deal of, seeing just how and even then we're seeing how players work. And I was very fortunate to work with legends, and the same thing, working with Mark Roth. And there's a couple instances when Walter was a free agent, working with Walter Ray and some of these other guys, again, trying in a quick manner. They start asking me questions, because they've seen my body work, what I've done. They're like, okay, well, how's this guy going to help me? And so I had to quickly kind of digest their lingo, how they perceive it, and then make suggestions based on that. And so, yeah, it's always been kind of cool to, communicate with those guys and hang out with those guys. And like I said, when it was on the lanes of, even working with Dick Weber, I mean, it was, again, even though I grew up in St. Louis, or outside of St. Louis in Illinois, I was a younger generation. I was a lot, let's see, Pete's 50, isn't that 57, 58? So I'm quite a few years, and he's the young one, so I'm quite a few years younger than him. But even working, I grew up watching those guys, watching Dick on TV, and I'm like, Mr. Weber, can I give you a tidbit? He goes, "Get it, son. How many times I got to tell you? The name's Dick. Don't call me Mr. Weber." And I'm like, "Okay, Dick. Here's the way it's being da. And and actually, what's funny is now thinking back on it, I mean, a lot of things. Duke was a lot like Dick Weber in a lot of ways. They see the lane and different things, because there'd be a lot of times where I could say just a couple words to Dick, and the same thing even with Norm. Like say a couple words, and they give you that look, and they're like, they digest it. Next shot, strike, or they get everything figured out, and they're like, okay, I'm good. And then you kind of move on. Small little keys where sometimes other guys, and example, even taking like Pete, there was times where I could say certain things to him, but I'd still have to watch a couple shots, because it would take him. It may, for him, he couldn't necessarily do it in one. Back in the day when he was in his prime, yeah, he could do it probably in like 2 shots. Where a guy like I said, Norm or Dick, they do it in 1 shot. So and even some other guys, and there's other guys where like, hey, yeah, I see this, and you try that. Okay, yeah. Well, then they throw a shot like that, and I'm like, no, we were talking like a different zone, different ball, and different hand position. But I mean, you stayed on this side of the foul line, so yeah, you had that going for you. That was close. So that was good. You got that part of it, and you hit the one in the front. So yeah, maybe it wasn't too far off. But, yeah, no, just the communication aspect. Like I said, it was over the years of thinking about all the different players from young and again, my test ground, or my upbringing on the ladies tour was really key, because let me tell you, I learned really quick. Granted, majority of the time living with my mom, and I had 2 sisters, but nobody can ever prepare you. Now, this is the old ladies tour. Nobody can ever prepare a young man who's in his late teens to hang out with 120 females week after week. Because and Sean told me, Sean kept warning me. He's like, oh, and then obviously, as we know, females, they cycle, then they start to tend to cycle together. And so, you have to learn what to say when, based on emotions and everything like that. So, yeah, the ladies tour really kind of, I think, looking back, the ladies tour was definitely huge in helping me move forward, because of, even though I didn't have to, at one point in time, had to deal with all 120 ladies each week. And again, when they walk on the truck, is it a happy day? Is it a sad day? Is it, did somebody's, is there personal stuff going on? Is there, there's so many different aspects. So, yeah, so I learned to I can't juggle, but you learn to juggle stuff like that. And you're like, kind of read them. You can kind of say, and Coach, as as soon as you're helping, and even Andrew, as you guys are as you're coaching people, you say a few lines, kind of get their kind of demeanor and their feel, and go, okay, this is how this is going to go today. How do I word it to make it not offensive or not upset them or not whatever? And you kind of just build and go that direction, So
there's a lot of times, you're going to ask a bowler and maybe a Team USA or something in the heat of the moment. And as soon as you say something to them, this is the kind of bowler that's going to ask you 10 questions. Why? What? When? Where? So you got to be ready for that kind of player too. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Man, no doubt. No doubt.
So let me throw you something else out here, buddy. I want to, and I'm sure hopefully a lot of fans want to know, what are some of your most memorable moments as a rep on both the men's and women's national tours on the telecast? Your most memorable moments on the telecast, and in most cases, were you pretty cool or sometimes pretty nervous?
Yes. The answer to all that is yes.
D. For all the
D,
above.
all of the above. Because I, for me, it was always it was my job. I had a job to do. It was my duty as I mean, and again, you compare it to any other sport, whether it's a caddy and a lot of times when as many players as we had on all the different tours, being the manager and whatever else. But then you get, you manage out the week and you get to showtime. The idea was to do everything possible to make our players win, and it's in living and dying on each shot. And I would, how many times I was in what a lot of the good players will tell you, if you don't get nervous at a chance to win a title, it means you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And I can't count the number of times where, I'd have to go sit with a player, or there's times where I'd have to go sit myself in certain situations because I'd have knots in my stomach and feel like I'm going to throw up. And then there's times where everything's kosher cool and you're thinking, okay, well, I've got this, then there's times where, and there were some shows where I'd stay up all night the night before, like couldn't sleep, tossing and turning, because I've got all these scenarios playing in my head of what could happen or what's going to happen based on certain players, certain reps, how they're going to attack lanes, how they're going to break down lanes, whether they're playing offense, defense. I then factor in the skill set of my player, the bowling balls we've been using. Is that an option? Should I have done this? Do I need to go drill something else? I mean, there's, the gamut of emotions, nonstop, because at the end of the day, like all professional athletes say, and the common thing is like Super Bowl, nobody remembers who finished second. It's one of those deals when, you meet so-and-so and they're like, oh yeah, well, I made 4 shows in my career. And you're like, okay, well, I mean, obviously we in bowling get that, but some people are like, but did you ever win? Like people who don't know bowling, did you ever win? No. Like, oh, so you're not that good then. I mean, that's the mentality of your average bowler, a consumer, or anybody in any sport. So that was always my thing, taking pride in situations. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of some very memorable moments over the course of time. With Weber, helping him win a few U.S. Opens, and just some of the stuff with him. Norm Duke and some of his runs, over those years. And even back in the ladies' days, one of the first ones, one of my first Storm memories that worked out. Never forget it because, of course, it was 9/11. So that started in 01. Starting the spring. Well, the ladies' tour is going on. We got all this different stuff happening. Well, the ladies' tour had already started. They were starting prior to the fall tour, and that was the start of the new men's tour. It was going to be on my first week tour repping with the guys. So now I've met some of the guys over the years. Some of the guys would come out to ladies' tour events. Coach, I don't know if were you at Connecticut when they had the joint U.S. Open when we had guys and girls?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was one of those deals where I met some of the guys then because the men's truck got so buried in the number of girls drilling balls was less. So we started helping them drill balls for the men's tour. So we got some of the tour guys coming on our truck and they're like, oh, hey, da-da-da. And, so me and Sean are, and you meet some of these guys and whatever. And just over the years, prior to leading up to this. Well, but again, September of 2001 is, man, it's going to be my first full week on the tour. It's the new regime. It's the new tour. This is what we're doing. And we were in Florida. We were in Davie, Florida when all that happened. We thought the world was, the world basically come to a stop. And Del Ballard and I, because Del was actually working for Ebonite at the time. So they got the motorhome. We can't fly, and rental cars or nothing. He's like, Schlem, we're going to have to we'll take our Jeep and we're going to drive. So we did everything we could do at the ladies tour Yeah, because they stopped and they're like, oh, we're going to kind of finish the stuff. Well, they still have been having that telecast. And I don't know. Have you guys had Liz Johnson on the show yet? Have we talked to Liz about it?
Yeah.
So she could fill you in because, of course, I wasn't there. But there ended up being a women's telecast that week, because obviously everything got canceled. But the ESPN couldn't get it, or was it ESPN? Yeah, it would have been ESPN, couldn't get a crew. So a local TV station actually had a guy with a handheld. That's how they recorded the show, which never really aired. They just did highlights. They just crowned a winner or whatever. Well, Liz ended up shooting 300 with a ball I mapped out before I left. So on that handheld camera show.
That's awesome.
I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a Tour Power. And, so Dallas texting Carolyn, hey, or we were chatting with Carolyn or whatever. And all of a sudden, Liz is like, honey, I love you. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, I blew 300 with that ball you mapped out before you left last night. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Sweet. Okay. So that worked out,
Awesome.
When you have different stuff like that, and different situations, over the course of time, like I can remember the week in, actually, was it Omaha? It was Omaha. Omaha, Nebraska, Robert Smith gets him in practice. And he goes, Schlem, I got nothing. And now you got to remember, too, in 01, 02, the two-handed evolution hadn't happened yet. And Maximum Bob had the higher rev. He was 150 revs more than anybody else in the building.
Which facility was this at?
Oh, man, it was – I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. It had I want to say it was was it a wood surface? It was a men's tour stop.
Trying
to go back.
Thunderbolt.
Yeah, we're talking probably I don't think it was
Maplewood.
02, 03 maybe. And but anyway, gets a Robert in practice, and he goes, Schlem, I got nothing. And I'm like, dude, like, you're Robert Smith. How do you not have anything? I'm like, you hook up the rubbish on top of it. Like, it's a wood surface free hook. He goes, dude, I'm telling you, I have nothing. I'm like, okay. So he's got like 8 balls with him. He's got more in the locker room. And I watched him throw like 3 shots with each of those 8 balls. And I'm like, wow, you're right. You got air. I'm like, how is this even? And then in the back of my head, I'm going, how is this even feasible? Like, this dude, like I said, at the time, rev rate wise, there was nobody even on his, not even sniffing his level. And I'm like, this guy can hook the ball in the air. Like, how can he not have ball reaction? And so I went to the truck. I mapped him out a case of balls. He used those 4 balls to make the show and run the field and win the title.
Whoa.
And so we did a complete re-rack. It was like everything he had was aired. I'm like, okay, well, we'll try this and this. And he's like, well, he goes, these 4 roll pretty good. He goes, I kind of like these 2, but this one kind of stands out. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a boost. It was a purple and blue eraser boost that he used most of the time. And I said, you want to drill a new one? He goes, no, I'm good. This one's working a week. I'm good. I can work with this one. And I'm like, man, 5 days ago, you were ready to like pack it in. He's like, I don't even know if I should bowl this week. I should just take the week off. And I'm like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
But, and just random wild times. Obviously, like I said, Weber, I think one of my best Weber stories, obviously with him, he's had some great TV shows. The 299 there in Grand Rapids with 2 different balls, a different ball playing a different angle in each lane. I think that was early on. That was one of those things when he quickly knew that he could trust me. He's like, man, he goes, I never saw that in a million years. But one of the best ones, Pete, had been bowling pretty well. This is like the mid to late 2000s, and been bowling pretty good. Probably the mid 2000s. And he bowls, I'm trying to remember where we're at. He bowled so. He's like, he comes up to me, he goes, hey, I'm not bowling next week. And I'm like, I mean, you're not bowling next week. He's like, his ex-wife, his now ex-wife, his wife at the time, he goes, yeah, we're going to take that honeymoon we never got. He goes, I'm going to go to Hawaii. We'll hang out. He goes, I should probably make it back to North Carolina. He goes, but, if we don't make it back, then I'll bowl the week after. I'm like, okay. So No Pete that next week. We get to North Carolina. He shows up, and typical Pete fashion, he's like, "Hey, what do I need to know about this and that?" Da, da, da. I'm like, "Well, did you bowl at all when you were on vacation?" He's like, "No, I played golf and we were on the beach." And he's now not throwing a competitive shot in, I don't know, 12 days, 14 days. Based off when he left the previous tournament, went to Hawaii, whatever, and then showed up for the week after, which was towards the end of the week. And I'm like, okay. I said, "You going to practice?" He goes, "Nah." He goes, "I feel all right." He's like, "You going to do anything?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." And I said, actually, I want to say, I think it was a dimension, believe it or not. And he goes, "Yeah, just show me whatever." He's like, "Just so we know, da da da." I'm like, "Okay." Comes out, throws his warm-up balls the next morning. I said, "How you feel?" He goes, "I'm going to win this week." And I'm like, "What?" I said, "Dude." He's like, "No." He goes, "I feel good. I'm going to win this week." I'm like, "Okay, sure as shit." He went through it. He was in the top 5 all week, makes the show, runs him down. He gets done. He goes, "I told you." I'm like, "Who has that switch?" And some of the other guys had heard that because he said it out loud enough, as we're walking through, as they're starting qualifying, other guys heard him. They're like, "Really? This guy's hasn't thrown a shot in 2 weeks and he's telling this ball rep he's going to win this week?" He did. And that's just like I said, Pete in his prime was, man, that was a whole nother level. I mean, that was a guy that had that switch
Right.
and that's the reason why he's got 5 U.S. Open titles. It's one of those things he's bound and determined. He knows he's not on the level with these kids now and the rev rates, and even not even necessarily the two-handers. I mean, you look at EJ Tackett and some of AJ Johnson and AJ Chapman and all these kids that have come this next generation, the one-handers that have the Mongo rev rate. We joke with Robert Smith now, and we're like, man, if you would have came out and toured this generation, you'd kind of be borderline like a stroker. He's like, "Why do you like that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Look at your rev rate numbers." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I was talking to Barnes about that not too long ago." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Barnes was a stroker then. Barnes is like the straight player now compared to these young guys." If you think about generations, but
Yeah.
it's just been wild to see the evolution of bowling, man. I've been very fortunate to kind of grow up in it and just see it all. And then even being a part of, like I said, being with Storm now for 19 years and seeing where we've come from. When people go, "Well, 19 years," I'm like, yeah, I can remember when Storm first started. Like, I'm still in the pro shop days and watching it kind of grow and more from what we've gotten to now. It's been pretty wild ride.
Yeah, you talk about memorable moments on tour. One of my memorable moments was when Duke made the bucket. Do you remember that shot for a major?
What's funny about that, Coach?
My most favorable, the greatest shot I've ever seen.
What's crazy is I saved that voicemail. I had a voicemail on my phone for, obviously now as we've had the evolution of phones and every time you get a new phone every couple of years and systems have changed, whatever. I saved a voicemail. I had a voicemail on my phone for about 4 years. And Norm, it was after that. It was like probably 3 days after that. And it was like middle of the night. Like I think I was sleeping. And I wake up the next day and I'm like, missed call Norm Duke. And I'm like, what the hell? And I listen to the voicemail. He's like, "Schlem dog, bucket." He goes, "Not just 1 pin, not 2 pins, 4 pins shaped like a bucket." Get knocked down in the title and win. It was like 100 or 150,000, whatever it was. He goes,
"Yeah,
I see it everywhere I go. Driving down the street, I see a bucket. In my sleep, I go play golf, I see a bucket. Bucket, bucket, bucket. Anyway, love you, man. And I'm like, so I call him back. I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "I just want to let you know what I see." He goes, "Are you seeing that bucket?" I'm like, "Well, no, because I didn't have to pick it." I said, "You're a Hall of Famer." I said, "You should have picked it." He goes, "Man." And it was one of those. It was a funny time, and so we had laughs with that for quite a few years. And like I said, the evolution of cell phones, and you can't keep a voicemail forever. But it was one of those deals. Like, bucket everywhere I go, I see a bucket.
Yeah, that was such a.
And and the other one too. I mean, you think about the Mika 10 pin thing, and Mika 10 pin, and then and
Yeah, that was rough.
And as we've all come to know, because it's a GIF. The who do you think you are? I am. That U.S. Open. That was right as I was transitioning into the office. So we had Del Ballard was there, Jim Callahan was there. I mean, those guys are part of our tour team now. And that was Pete's last U.S. Open win, and he'd use a Marble Pearl those first few games, and it just kept seeing the spot transition. And I'm like, man, I just need a ball to see that spot just a little different. And I'm seeing it back on my mind because there were certain drillings that Pete would use. There was only a couple, honestly, there was only 3 drillings that Pete would ever use at a U.S. Open when I was a tour rep. Once we got dialed in, and we would use different balls because we always knew the pattern was going to play a certain way and he could do a certain thing. And the Marble Pearl he had that he was using on that show, we're getting, he gets through that semifinal match, and I'm like, man, I'm thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, what does he have? What does he have? And now, like I said, Dell and Jimmy are new. I run, and Coach, you've been the carrier. I don't know, Drew, you've been a carrier in New Jersey?
Well, that's a lot of running in that big building.
By the way, I'm fat, so the TV pairs and it's to the middle, down the steps into the locker room, all the way in the back. Come huffing my fat ass back up. And I get there for the warm-up shots prior to the title match. And I said, Pete, and I'm huffing, puffing, I'm like, throw this. And Dell and Jimmy looks at me, and Dell's like, what the hell? Pete throws one shot with a frantic, the orange and green frantic.
Yeah.
And he turns around, looks at me. He goes, oh, this is good. And Dell's like, what the hell? No, trust me, I respect, me and Dell are good friends, and Dell taught me a lot from when I was a kid growing up and tour repping, because he was a great tour rep in his day, and I learned how to see things and do whatever. I learned a lot from him. And Dell looks at me, he's like, because he hadn't, he bowled against Pete, but he still hadn't learned how am I going to help Pete kind of thing. Because again, with when he was working for Ebonite, the people he was working with, he had plenty of different egos and different stuff, working with Couch and, Tommy Jones and those guys. It was different animal than working with Pete or Norm or whoever. And Pete throws one shot. Now he's thrown this Marble Pearl 2 complete games, and it's been okay. He's been able to grind through it. And I'm like, oh, throw a shot. And it was I want to say it was a flat 10 even. And Pete goes, oh no. He goes, he's like, Schlem, that's good. All right. And Dill's, what the hell? And then, he throws a couple of shots back and forth, and he's like, yeah, I'm going with a frantic. We're like, okay. And Dell and Jimmy look at me with I got a third eyeball in my head, and they're like, are you seriously going to change balls right now? He could use that Marble Pearl and hit the pocket every time. I'm like, no, he can hit the pocket every time with this one. I said, but is this going to see the lane enough? And, obviously then it morphed into needing all 10 to win it, and the call by, I can't remember who was doing the broadcasting that day, but, then it turned into, who do you think you are deal. But, yeah, that ball, the funny part is that frantic, that was the only game he used it the entire tournament. That ball never saw me in the entire week. That was the other thing that kind of added to the story. Dell and Jimmy were like, how the hell? I'm like, okay. I said, you guys now know Pete is Pete. Adele goes, well, I bowl against him. He goes, I know Pete's Pete. I said, there's going to be times where you're going to have to pull this magic, pull these things out of your ass and just have all this stuff in your head. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to have to – and they're like, no, make sure you get all the options known for Pete, what he's got in the bag in the locker room, because, there could be that time where, same layout, different RG, different cover stock. And that was, at my point in time with that one, I was just looking for a different cover stock. It wasn't so much the RG and diff, because the lane had – there at Carolier, it kind of broke down the way it broke down. I'm like, I just need the cover to see it just a tick sooner. And, Pete's going to be able to kind of do a little bit, if he has to, he can manipulate a little bit with his hand. But yeah, that was, there's stuff like that, very fortunate to be part of that, again, call it intuition, call it just being, I was with the guy for 11 plus years as a tour rep, so you learn nuances and you learn ins and outs. Again, could I do that with Norm Duke? Absolutely not. I couldn't run the locker room, come back and Norm throw this ball. He'd be like, he'd throw it for, he'd huck it as a 10-pin ball, be like, yeah, I can pick a 10-pin with it. He wouldn't even throw it for a strike ball. That's just Norm, so it's just a different mentality, in different situations. So.
Wow, these are amazing stories. Whenever when a new Roto Grip ball comes out, bro, and it's launched, how is its name determined? And I'm sure, are you a part of that decision? I mean, I've always wanted to know how the names come up.
I am that decision, actually.
You
So
are. I had to figure you were the man.
yeah, so once it kind of, so one of those things that, early on in my career, and again, like I told you guys, my background with, doing the deal of having a degree in drafting, and I used to draw and do stuff as a kid, and even in my early days at Storm, hell, there were some of the early, the Storm balls in those early 2000s. Some of those logos were ones that I hand drew and sent to the office. They're like, hey, here's a name we're coming up with. What do you think? And, we had an ad agency at the time. And I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe this or this. And, they're like, hey, we took your idea and we made a small tweak. And, because we were a lot smaller than what we are now. We had a couple sales guys, our interior office. I mean, we're up to, we've got 2 levels. We got production downstairs. We got offices upstairs. Every spot's full. We got people everywhere. Like, we were about less than half the size in 01 when I started. So it's everybody a little bit of everything. But, it was always one of those things that, I saw myself as, hey, if I get into creating and doing stuff, hey, coming up with ideas for clothing, whatever. And so when we started with the ad agency, when Bill decided, and that's really kind of how it was, if you guys remember, because Hank had been the Roto Grip guy for a long time, and then they decided to put Hank into marketing and sales and different stuff for both brands. And Roto Grip the cell came out in 08, and Roto Grip had a little bit of a hit run. We had Malott. We just got Malott, and he was player of the year and different things. But then it kind of just got stale and kind of just went off the grid, and there was not really a lot of focus paid to it. Even Roger Nordic was here at the time, and he was the Roto Grip guy, but it was never really full attention to Roto Grip. And when Roger took over marketing, it was one of those things like, hey, I'd already moved out here, in 2010, and they go, hey, do you want to take over and just be the focus of Roto Grip? And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's the next step. I'd already been doing the tour thing for a while, and it was a different point in my life at that point in time as well. And we'd already hired an ad agency. Actually, we still kind of use today. And they were the ones kind of trying to do more, but then it slowly morphed into, now I have full kind of creative control. And so when I come up with names, or a lot of times even a logo design, I'll research and whether I draw stuff or find a couple ideas and kind of morph them together. And then coming up with colors. Then it's also, I'm picking the cover stocks. I'm trying to pick the finish. I'm trying to figure out not only the Roto Grip line top to bottom, but also to make it mesh with the Storm side and not overlap. Because we don't want bowling balls to get lost. It's one of those things that, even though Roto Grips now is the little brother, but that was, 2012 was when I started doing the brand thing, and that was the deal of, Billy committed at that time in 11. Hey, let's put Roto Grip back on the map. We're going to do this, this, and this. We rebranded, did a bunch of stuff, and then it kind of started going this way. And then I was able to kind of just take it and keep spinning it forward. And even now, just working on, something came up the other day, so we're back, making all balls here in Utah, because production facility in Texas, we're not doing that currently. So everything's back making here, hostels and all that stuff. And, just some small tweaks. And we're like, hey, our process is different than this and that. And, it's all of a sudden, it was funny. I was on a call. I go to the restroom. I come back. Somebody's like, hey, somebody was calling you. And then I look at my phone. I had a missed call from Hank. And I'm like, man, I was away from my desk for 1 minute and 30 seconds. But anyway, I go downstairs. We're like, Schlem, do you approve this, color combination and the way this looks? And And yeah, signed off on it. And, we just kind of keep it moving forward. So the Roto Grip stuff, they kind of let me, as Bill likes, the funny part is it's morphed into so much that when Bill introduces me to people that don't know or that know bowling, he goes, oh, well, this is Roto Schlem. Like, he don't even call me Chris Schlemer or, hey, this is Chris, the brand manager of Roto Grip. Like, oh, this is Roto Schlem. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's what the boss calls me, I guess that's what I am, So, yeah,
wow.
It's kind of, like I said, it's been cool to be a part of it. And like I said, from the Storm, and I still help on the Storm side with a lot of stuff. We still have meetings and the marketing team they've got on the Storm side. So it's just me sole focus on Roto Grip. So when it's doing what I have to do, domestically, Chad McLean actually does a lot of the OEM stuff because their process is always going. And there's a lot of times it makes it tough where, again, we're in a weird time now, but when I'm on the road, there for a while wasn't traveling as much, but then I started getting back to traveling events or going to this clinic or going into this event or, Extravaganza was supposed to be this weekend, for the Bowling Hall of Fame in Vegas. Obviously that didn't happen. It's hard for me to kind of maintain all those duties for doing all those OEM balls when, sometimes I'm only in the office 2 weeks a month, so and then trying to get out as well with the sales guys and visit pro shops because that's a big thing. Obviously, come up. It's already been a couple of years though when I was there with you guys, Drew, with the big matchmaker. Trying, and that's one thing that Hank and I are trying to do is get out with the sales guys and visit pro shops like you guys and visit you guys because we need to have a better pulse of what's going on. We want your opinion. We want to see, again, consumers where you are going to be different than consumers. And recently it was south. Well, last fall I was with Ralph Solon. I was in Florida and then went up to Georgia. And even some of the other guys, hitting, when I was with Mickey Luongo up there in the Northeast, we went through all the parts of New York and then over to Pennsylvania and different stuff. I mean, there's just so many, when you walk into a pro shop and you see what's going on and you're like, okay. And then you hear the person talk and they talk about their sales and you see the numbers and you're like, so this guy can, when I walk into a shop and they go, hey, can you make us more low-end balls? Because we can't sell anything over $150. And then you go 20 miles down the road and the guys go, can you make more high-end balls? Because, I don't have enough of these to sell because that's all my customers want. So trying to figure out the balances and, the lesser of the two evils. And we take it to heart. I mean, like I said, when we go out and communicate with shops and customers, it's, it doesn't fall upon deaf ears, like, hey, what can we do? At the end of the day, we're all in this together. How do we grow the sport of bowling? How do we make it better? That's our focus. How do we make it better? So, if you guys come up with an idea or a consumer says, hey, unfortunately we can't answer and we can't make everything come to life that everyone suggests, but we do at least listen to it. A lot of times we kick it around in meetings, sometimes multiple times, or sometimes we'll say something and we may not think much, but if I'm in a meeting with 6 or 8 other people and they all go, oh, hey, we need to do that. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we need to do that then. To me, it may not be a big thing. Or Hank may say something and we're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And Hank's like, well, I didn't really see it that way. But again, it's all part of the business and making this all grow and keep pushing forward really. So.
Wow. Absolutely. AJ, I'm having such a good time. Are we overdue or we can keep going?
Oh yeah. Hey, I think we put him to sleep. Is it nap time, AJ?
No nap times. No nap times.
I tell you what, I know where you guys are coming from. Well, you guys have been locked up longer than I have, but I hit that stretch. When you're home and like you lose, all of a sudden you start losing track of like days and times a day. And
oh yeah,
I'll be honest, my schedule got whacked. I hit all of a sudden I hit a stretch where and I wasn't feeling good there for a little bit, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just gone away. Next thing you know, I'm like, it's 5:30 a.m. I probably should go to bed. And then you take naps at random times. Like your eating schedule is off. You're like, man, can we get back to normalcy a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't know if is it Saturday or Wednesday. I couldn't figure it out.
It all turns to blur day.
Yeah,
it's all exactly. Blur.
We have 2 cats that we have here at the house, and my wife and I. Luckily, my wife is still working. She's a school teacher, and we both had to leave on the same day and be gone. And we're wondering if our cats had any understanding as to what they were doing after seeing us for weeks on end of not ever leaving early.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what you see those memes around social media when your animals, your cats or your dogs are looking at you, going, dogs see it one way and cats see it another way. The cats are like, so did you get fired? Like, why are you here? Like, what's going on?
Exactly.
You're invading.
Wow.
In my daily space, your dogs are. It's a wild deal. So, well, hopefully for you guys, you can get out and experience the world. Like I said, I've been back to normal now for about 3 weeks, and like I said, we're getting a spot where we don't even need masks in most places. So it's we're very fortunate here. Again, everywhere across the country is totally different. We just our sales reps. Travis Summers actually down in that kind of middle southeastern deal, and North Carolina is now shut down until the end of June. So bowling centers are still not opening there. Although we did find out, I guess the BPAA is going to try and help in that regard. Bowling centers getting moved around, and I don't know if you guys saw the stuff in Wisconsin, and different things are moving them into different phases. But yeah, North Carolina, they bumped bowling centers back, and they're like, oh no, you're closed until like June 28th or whatever. And so we're like, man, those guys, it's not fair in some cases. You've got
people 26.
Yeah, you got to get out and live life. I mean, it's one of those things you are. I mean, especially now that the CDC is bringing all this stuff out that, they're like, hey, well, there's more flu deaths in this state than COVID deaths. Okay, well, let's still social distance. Let's still wear masks. Let's still wash our hands and let people get back to their job and making money and get back to bowling and doing whatever else they're doing, want to do, Yeah. So let's hope it's happening. Like I said, Vegas went from tentatively looking at August to all of a sudden, boom, June 4th, they're firing in. They're like, you know what? We've got to get going. So hopefully we can get some other places across this country to follow. So
absolutely. Sure thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we can. I mean, if you wanted to hang on, we can do more. But otherwise, we can cut it short. We had a bunch of questions we had set up, and I think that overall, your history in bowling, I think we underestimated it with questions we were going to ask you.
Oh, okay.
But it's fine, man. We've had a great time with you. If you have more time, we can sit and chat for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm whatever you guys want. I've had my emails in check before I stepped in here, and working on some projects. And again, we're dialing it, finishing the last touches on the catalog, and going through updating Crazy Eights. We're doing a little bit of a rebrand of sorts and changing up the mailer. Well, as you guys know, we normally do the postcards, but we're not going to do postcards anymore. It was one of those things that worked for a good bit. The stew. Hey, you know what? Pizza is my favorite food group. That's all I know. That's why I have a pizza shirt. It's one of my favorite meals. I could eat it any meal of the day. And you go to Japan, I mean, you do eat it any meal of the day. You can get whatever you want.
That's the question my wife brings up. She's like, what do we want to eat? And I'm like, it's either pizza, Mexican, or like sushi. I was like,
yeah, I got plenty of pizzas here. Well, off of bowling, I was always kind of curious too. You work so many hours, and whatever time do you have away from the tour, bowling, roto? Well, what are some of your favorite hobbies, man?
Well, when like I said, back in the day, it was a lot more difficult of a schedule with back in my early tour rep days of being on the road 40 plus weeks a year, eat, sleep, and breathe in it. And over the years, as I've learned and transitioned, like I was saying earlier, obviously the quarantine stuff, that was one of the things that I always had to do to recharge, because, after, if it was a 3-week stint or however long on tour, I would have to go, whether I was at home or in a hotel or something, I would need a good 48, 72 hours of quiet, just to get my mental capacity, just kind of recharge and get everything back and kind of in check, because, the gamut of emotions and everything that goes along with it, the stress and everything, I would just kind of mentally be in a weird spot. And so it would just be a quiet time where, whether it's watching TV or sleeping a little bit more or listen to music or whatever in those point in times. But these days, as things have progressed, and obviously my schedule a little bit different, I like to, I definitely learned to play golf a little bit more. My very first time golfing, and actually, him quite well. My very first time on the golf course was with Randy Stoughton. We were at a women's tour stop in Tennessee.
Great guy.
I was still working a truck, and I'd never been to a golf course. I'd been to a driving range a couple times, and we had this deal. It was like, I don't want to say the bowling center put on this like golf event, and a lot of the girls back then, I mean, you're Lisa Bishop and Tish, and there were some pretty good female golfers, girls that bowled on tour that were really good golfers. And so they had this big deal, and local people could sign up, and Stoughton was there for Ebonite, and he's like, I said, man, I'd like to go play. I said, because we have a free day. I said, I'd like to go play, but I've never run a course. So I have rental clubs. I got my freaking tennis shoes. And Randy was kind of like my coach or whatever. But, I still haven't had, to this day, he's probably really the only instruction I've had in my golf career. But, obviously with I need to go get a lesson is what I need to do. Obviously, helping people bowl, it goes the other way in other sports. Like I need to have somebody help me figure out my swing. Yeah. But there's times where my schedule doesn't always pan out. There's times where I play 3 times in a year, and then there's times where I play, 25, 30 times in a year. It's never the same, so, but I enjoy golfing, getting out. Just, a lot of times anymore, I do have a core group of friends here in Utah. A couple of them bowl. So they, of course, want to chat bowling, this and that, but some of them are not bowlers. And so like there's times where we'll go like, hey, we're gonna go watch a concert and we'll go do this, and we go watch some bands or go hang out, at a festival or something like that, and like totally non-bowling, music, just chill. And and what's funny is there's sometimes where you hang out with different groups, and they're like, man, I know you're not working, but can I ask you a bowling question? I'm like, yeah, sure. Or even like when I go home for the holidays, I've got a lot of friends, through bowling, and my family, most of my family bowls and stuff like that. And you go hang out with people, and, some people I haven't seen in years. Like I'm talking like, I haven't seen this person in 15 years, 20 years. And they go, oh, hey, how you doing? Hey, I got a bowling question for you. Like may have not talked bowling for like 4 days. All of a sudden they hit me, boom. I haven't seen this guy in 20 years. Hey, I got a bowling ball question for you. I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Fire away. Let's go. Sometimes, as you guys know, it's one of those deals we're just always on call. You're kind of like you're kind of like a doctor, and like that's what was going back to the like the tour rep thing. That was one of those deals that there was times where I get a text message or a phone call. It could be 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning from one of my guys. Whatever time zone they're in compared to where I am. Not so much the girls. It was more the guys. I'd have a few guys that hit me up then, whether they were hanging out, drinking with their buddies and had an idea, or some cases they couldn't sleep, and because they had certain things about bowling going through their head, they're like, hey, you got a minute? I need to talk, and if I happen to wake up, I'm like, yeah, okay, shoot, let's go. So it's kind of one of those things of kind of being on call and being able to understand, because again, in some cases, the way people explain it doesn't always come out the right way. And so if they can bounce it off a coach or somebody, whoever they're confident in, to help them either understand it or help them digest it, or at least remember it, like, hey, I was thinking this and this, and what's the result of, why did this do this? Well, you throw different things to them, or like, oh, hey, yeah, that's a good idea. We should remember that next time. Some guys were forward thinkers, some guys were reverse thinkers. And when I say reverse thinkers, it's one of those things that there's some players that can remember stuff they did. Oh, I can remember 6 years ago at this tournament on this pattern, and maybe a totally different pattern. Like, but I did use this ball from this part of the lane, and I did this. Can you give me something like that? Sure. Let me build something like that. So then I'd have to go back and dissect numbers and cover stocks and whatever, and try and emulate something like that. And there were times where it would work. I mean, so you can't just downplay it and be like, okay, well, you're an idiot. Like the game's changed in 6 years, or 10 years or 15 years. Because in some cases, if that person had that in their head and they can make it work, they would, and it would work. It'd be like, never would have guessed that in a million years. But, not everybody's that way. And a lot of guys, then there's some players that they never remember the past, and they're always moving forward. Like, hey, what's the new ball? Hey, I need this. Hey, I need that. Okay, well, let's do it. Let's go that way. Let's get forward, or hey, can you, with this ball, can we trick it to do this? I'm like, okay, well, that's not what we designed that ball for, but we can trick it to do whatever you want. And then we tell like, well, hey, why don't we drill this ball? Well, I don't like that ball. What do you mean you don't like that ball? Well, I threw it once. I threw it like 3 shots, and I don't like it. I'm not going to drill one. Some people have that mentality. And I was always a firm believer, and that was one of the things that I earned respect with our guys early on too, tour repping, because being around bowlers and living a life that I did, with the ladies tour and even helping men's bowlers around St. Louis and different stuff, you learn early on if somebody doesn't like a bowling ball, their confidence level is not going to be high. And if you're trying to compete at the highest level and they don't have confidence in the bowling ball, I'm like, hey, why don't you throw this shot? And they're like, okay, well, I'm going to get 9 like every third shot. So looking for a 5-bagger, not really sure I want to, go spare, double, spare. That's the mentality I have because it's a certain ball and it does a certain thing. Some people are more open than others in that regard. And some people will be like, well, hey, let's try another one. Okay. And then some people absolutely refused. Like, hey, let's drill a ball. Nope, not drilling it. Okay. All right.
Oh my goodness, this is great.
You just gotta know the animals. You just gotta know the animals you're dealing with and how to feed them. That's all.
Oh boy, AJ, I got to throw another one at him. And
Okay.
From the era, who are some of your most favorite pros growing up as a kid? Who did you really admire when you were watching the guys back in the day?
Like I said, I got into bowling late when I was, I didn't start till I was like 14, but, then started getting into it and watching guys and stuff like that. And, watching guys that, cause growing up in St. Louis, it wasn't until later on when I started kind of getting help for some finally got to a spot, as a kid. And I think as we can relate to all youth bowlers, your parents are always going to be that one to help you. They're that watchful eye. And finally, after a few years, I got to a point where, as I got in the game, I learned more about it prior to working in the pro shop. My dad's like, you know what? I really can't help anymore. Like, because I'm going to reach out to some of my buddies and see if they can help you, because my dad was a decent bowler back in the day too, throwing a caramel white dot and whatever else. My dad was averaging 2.0, 210 back in the white dot days, But there also came a point in time where his game was different than mine. And he's like, I can't really help you. Like, let me see if I can get, and really kind of taking that aspect and moving forward. But as I got into it and started watching more and more, I will tell you, and I told him this years and years ago, one of the guys that I was really fond of his style and his ability, because he wasn't a power guy and he wasn't a straight guy, was Brian Voss. EV and his versatility. And I told him that after I got out there and got to know him and hang out with him and this and that. And I said, man, there was times where I actually went through phases where I'm like trying to emulate and do different things. I said, because I grew up being really good at throwing hard and straight off the gutter, you got to remember too, out of St. Louis, you had, Bornhop and you had Lightfoot and you had, all those guys that were really good at playing a lip. But, you had for cranker guys, there weren't too many. You had Pete and, a couple other guys that kind of became, household names outside of that. I said, but, tell BV, I'm like, you were always kind of that deal of you were versatile. You had that touch. For me, Ozio was another one. Because again, he could play super straight, but he also had that touch and feel and just repeating shots. And that was kind of more of what I morphed into myself. Because again, my body position, everything, as much as I tried working on it, it kind of looked like a baby giraffe trying to like load up, and everyone's like, oh man, you're big, you got a strap on. And I'm like, yeah, no. I said, if you want to go back when I was a kid, when I was first, then I started getting good at repeating it. Like I was like the Traber kind of deal, only more closer to Jimmy Kuhn speed. Like, I was 21 miles an hour. My rev rate was, 200 pushing it. I could play the lip and hard. And if it hooked too much, I could throw it harder. But that was kind of my advantage. But anyway, learning how to be a little bit more versatile. And, it was one of those things that my buddies used to always joke with me when I was a kid and started to get better and started bowling stuff in St. Louis. They're like, Schlem, they're like, Stuff, you all right? Like your nose hurt? Because, you get to move into second arrow. I'm like, yeah, screw you guys. Second arrow is like, it was a big deal for me. Like first arrow was my happy place. I could do that. Right. But anyway, yeah, like I said, BV and Ozio, those were two guys. Ozio was always the epitome of timing. And that was later on, like I said, then becoming a tour rep. And when I started, he was on our staff at the time, before he he's now gallivanting around. He's doing the fishing thing every day. But, he was out on the tour and then bowled some senior stuff a little bit. But, learning him inside and out, he was a unique person. The way he saw the lane and reacted to things. Man, that guy, like John Jowdy used to say, that guy, Ozio won every practice session. He never lost a practice session.
I remember.
Never really added up to that, but he never lost a practice session.
No, he talked about practice back in Sebring in the old days at Kegel. He would come down and work out. Of course, want to talk to John and learn things about lane maintenance, John Davis. And he would practice, but bro, he would start like at noon and he had a flight like 4 o'clock. He'd never make that flight to Orlando. No. He would just keep going. And we had the CAT system in the old days, and he would throw a shot, come back and look at it, throw a shot. He says, "Oh, that's off a half a board. I got to play some more." And he was just, how he was. And who was any better than playing the lip than Ozio? And but yeah, it was a fun thing to watch him play. He's a great
absolutely.
player.
And that's the crazy part. When obviously you got to experience it, Coach, and the fact of, man, working with him in practice sessions and be like, well, hey, the gutter, and again, lane technology at the time was different than what it is now. And it's like, we always knew the gutter was probably an option, but maybe they would try to take it out of play. And then obviously you have to take into consideration a lane install and everything like that. And I'm like, man, I said, you don't have to get into probably 20. You don't have to get into like 20, but if you get into like 15, snap your finger, you can do it. And then come time to play, and that part of the lane is perfect. Like, that's where he should be playing. He's trying to play the gutter. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He goes, well, I think I got something here. And I'm like, man, these other guys who are half as good at repeating shots as you, they're shooting 240, and you're out here grinding away on the gutter, shooting 2-0, 2-teen. Like, you can't make it. He's like, I'm good. I'm like, okay. And, there'd be times where he'd finally give up and jump in, or the times where he'd grind it out and then miss the cut by 25, 30 pins. I can't believe I did it. I'm like, dude, I told you. Like, all you had to do was take that step left and get where everybody else was playing. It was kind of like a trough. Like, you could bowl blindfolded and it would strike, but you refused because you were bound and determined to play that spot that you saw on one pair or one lane. And I'm like, oh. But again, that's the joys of, and the number of times of, that's what, and he was one of those classic guys. And like exactly what you said, practice session. I had some guys that rarely showed at the practice session. I had, from Weber to Himmler to Mike Edwards to Dennis Rand, all those guys rarely made it. Robert Smith, they barely practiced. But then I had guys like Ozio and Forkel and some of these other guys that practice session, they're like, hey, you got time? Because we're going to bowl some more. Or, hey, after this second squad's done, can you come back tonight at like 10:30? Okay, I'll still be here. There's times where I finish on the truck with the second squad, go back in the bowling center. We're there till 2 in the morning because they're still practicing.
Yeah, I wonder what it might have been something because Eric and him were roommates. You never can tell, but
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the other thing, the other problem with that was Forkel being left-handed, and he was always. And there's always been, and you guys both know those people that always chasing the fit. And the number of times where, go out to the truck and of course it fell on me because obviously there was 2 reps that preceded me, but Forkel had already been out there. And they're like, and Keith would just give me a hard time. He's like, really? I've got to slug 10 balls because we're doing a pitch change. And I'm like, no, it wasn't me. I don't even know what you're talking about. And it'd be slug 10 balls, and then 2 days later, slug them all again and go back to what it was. This is before interchangeable thumbs. So it would be slug, pitch change, finger slug, do this, do that, change this, change that. And then all of a sudden, no, that didn't work. I'm going back to the other side. Then the guys on the truck have to do it all over again. Oh, yeah. He was definitely not a truck favorite, let me tell you. Kind of like PA. PA was another pain in their keister. Because PA, every time the interchangeable thumb helped him out because every time my man PA would work out a thumb, and he was obviously throwing our stuff there for a while in his career too. He's like, yo, Mop, I gotta reslug that. I'm like, hey, did you drill the ball? He goes, I gotta reslug it. I messed it up when I worked it out. I'm like, okay. I think the record I'll have to ask Keith, but I think the record for PA, there was one ball that he re-slugged like 6 times before he even threw it. Because every time he worked it out, he kept screwing up the top of because he was always a pressure field guy, and he's always, as soon as he messed up the bevel, he'd stop. He's like, I got to re-slug it. I can't do it.
Oh my God.
There's guys like that. I mean, it's then you go the opposite of that. You take guys like I don't know if Andrew, you saw him, but you take guys like Parker or Bob Learn or whatever. They take a hand drill and grind out like half to 3/4 of an inch of the slug to the front and just make it like super round, super caved. They're like, oh yeah, that feels good. I can clear that. I'm like, there's nothing even to hang on to. I hope to God you can clear that. It's funny to see the total opposite of the way some of these guys, just their mentality. Yeah. Like, this, and like I said, it was fun to watch PA frown at the workout table because mop, I screwed it up. Done, mop. You gotta reslug. I'm like, man, are you ever gonna throw that ball? Like, is it ever gonna see the lane? Because you keep screwing up the thumbs, like come on, man.
I see the top of the thumb hole, so like a volcano, top of it. It's just like, whoa, and Parker could grind on them. You're right. I've seen that happen too.
With the Black & Decker hand drill, because that was the only reason they had one on. That's the only reason they had one on the workout table in the locker room, was for those guys, the handful of guys that use that to grind out the front of the slug. Then you go to the opposite of that. Then you go to our boy Duke, who needs all the little notches and don't bevel the top of the hole, but carve out a chunk here so I can get my layered cork there, and then slice it over here so I can put some tape there, and then notch it over here with a rasp so I can put a piece of tape there.
I never could really get the idea at Kegel when he would be working with us some shots, and I never could figure out the cork, how he did it, and how it worked. I think it was a top secret, so I never asked. So you may know about that, but
for him it was, and again, he was a little bit different than, because some of the other old guys, it's kind of an old guy thing because cork's not really a modern generation deal. But like Walter would just kind of use the cork just for texture to hang on to. And even there's a couple times where Parker would use it, but Norm would actually use it because he could actually, and he would move it around different spots because it would allow him, if he was trying to do a certain thing with his hand. That's why he's always played around with different stuff in there. So he'd get his thumb to kind of sit in a certain spot to where there was no pressure, or if you wanted to feel a certain thing, like a certain, whether it was a certain drag off this part of his nail, or feel something come off of this part of his thumb, then that way he could feel it. And that's why some of those guys are instantly good at off their hand. They know whether it's a quality shot or not. Some guys have no clue, and girls or any bowler for that matter. There's some bowlers just don't know. They're like, well, how'd that feel off your hand? I don't know. And when they say they don't know, odds are they really don't know because they've never been taught, or they've never thought about their hand and the pressure points and everything like that. Where then you take a guy like Duke, where how'd you feel off hand? He goes, well, I felt that there was a drag in the wrong spot. I need to move that. I need to move some tape and cork around because it's not where I want the drag. I need it. Once they get that deal where it fits, then they kind of shim it up to make sure their hand gets to that spot.
Right.
That was kind of his. That's kind of been his deal all along, really.
Yeah. There was one time at Kegel I tried to. I was going to throw one of his balls. He said I couldn't throw it because it's too sharp. Fingers were too sharp, bro. Couldn't get there.
There used to be times where like, hey, Schlem, I left a ball on, he's on 15 and 16. Hey, I think I had a ball on 31, 32. Can you go grab it? And most of the time because I'm talking to guys, I grab a ball and I'm like, whether I scoop it up with my hand or stick my fingers in it. And yeah, some of them, the crazy part is some of them will be sharper than others. So I'd pick him up because his fingers are huge. His hand is big for a little guy. Like it used to be the deal where, so his cuts, because he doesn't use inserts, he was 4'11" and 4'9", or 4'9", 4'11". So he had a stretch ring finger, 4'9", 4'11". That was his full span. And Weber was the opposite with inserts. So Weber was 4'11" and 4'9" with a dropped ring back in the day. But some of those, and of course he'd kind of work out the finger holes to kind of almost make. Sometimes he drill them oval, and then sometimes he would. Just depends on like textures and feels of cover stocks and core materials. But yeah, it'd be a couple balls. I'm pick it up. I'm like, ow. I think I just slightly open. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to carry this one because I can't slide my fingers in it. You know. But yeah, I mean that was part of the deal too. Of what's funny is the morph of the tour reps and what they carry now. Because way back when, way back when it was like I said, we had Scotch-Brite, had a couple colors of Scotch-Brite, and you had that sneaky piece of lane screen if you needed it. Well, then it morphed into all these Abralon pads. Well, then mine turned into the tour rep diaper bag, because my guys always seemed to forget something or needed something. And so I had all the Abralon pads. I had tape. I had, black tape, white tape. I had rosin bags. I had new skin. I had pain meds for Weber and Duke. I had candy for Ryan Schaefer because, Ryan being a diabetic, there'd be times when it morphed into my pack kept getting bigger and bigger. I'm like, I'm just going to finally I got a computer bag and I started shoving all the stuff in there. I'm like, I need a bigger bag. And they're like, what do you have in there? And then once I showed it to all the guys, they're like, oh, man, we're that needy? I'm like, how many times are we at practice and you guys all of a sudden like, oh, I need tape, and you're on lane 1, the truck's out the back door down the corner. I'm like, well, I didn't have tape and you don't have any tape. Well, how the hell am I going to get tape? I got to run all the way to the truck. So, yeah, it turned into my diaper bag. And then other guys started carrying them and they're like, man, this is a lot easier. And then it morphed into backpacks, of course. But yeah, with, like I said, having, candy, because that was one of the things before Schaefer got his pump that he, has now. And obviously a lot of diabetics have that based on what they are. He would have crashes. Somebody'd flag me down or he'd flag me down. I was like, Schlem, can you go get me a Coke? And I need peanut M&Ms or whatever from the snack machine because, he could feel himself. And all of a sudden it's like, it legit, when he would hit a crash spot, he'd struggle to throw shots for a few frames. So then it just turned into the deal of, once I carried it, and I'm like, hey, did you check out the candy machine or did you get something for me to throw in here? And then that way, because again, he's not always thinking about it. I said, hey, whatever you want. And there was a list of, I can't remember at the time, like 4 different things that he really liked. So I'd go to the sack machine and boom, I'd make sure I have like 2 packs because if he had a crash spot and he's like, he'd wave me and I could tell by the look in his face, I'm like, okay, well, here's this for now. Let me go get you a soda and try and get your sugar back up, but obviously it got better after he got his pump and everything was regulated. So, but, kind of part of the deal of, like I said, I had the PBA, you just call it my diaper bag.
That's pretty funny.
Oh man, this is great. Well, AJ, I've got enough of my questions here with the man. So, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions that I'm going to go through. I have a few more, but I think that we're reaching almost 2 hours already. So,
time we're having fun.
So everybody comes on, they're like, how are we going to talk for 45 minutes? I don't understand what you're doing. And then the next thing you know, it's like an hour and 10 minutes into it, and they're like, oh, well, that went pretty fast.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you got people like me that ramble and have weird stories.
Stories are good. I like story time. We used to talk about that back when I was in Tom Kelly's pro shop. Man, senior could bring up some stories. We talked about it before coming on today. It's like story time. All right, let's sit down and check this out. We got to hear this out.
Yes.
We got to hear what's going on.
Yeah, and honestly, that's what I used to love about. That was my big thing. I enjoyed the senior tour once I got there because I got to become friend. Again, and working with Dick Weber and Mark Roth and John Hersina was on staff and hanging out with those guys and Guppy Troop was coming out and Guppy was still in his prime out there. Hanegard wasn't out there too much, but and Petraglia, senior, Johnny Petraglia, he still calls me to this day. He's like, hey, big guy, comes up. He always hits me on the chest. He's like, hey, big guy, how you doing? I'm like, good, buddy. Because there's times where, whether you're hanging out, having a glass of wine or we would go catch dinner, I'd go to dinner with Johnny and just the stories, from not only bowling, but also life. That was a big thing for me, especially for like him being in the war and stuff like that. My grandfather was in World War II. And so some of the war stories and just some of the stuff that he went through, as he turned into an athlete, when he came back, it was he was in a weird spot in his life. And like you said, I don't know if you guys ever heard that story. Johnny's got some good stories, senior.
Yeah.
And and actually, what's funny is even Earl Anthony was around. Bob Hart was out there. Earl Anthony was around, and just you'd sit down. I'm sitting. There's times where I'm sitting there. I'm like, I'm sponging. I'm like,
oh yeah,
man, like I'm the luckiest dude on the planet because the stories that are coming out around this table.
Yeah.
When you got the legends of the game, and of course the stories get really good when they got a couple of glasses of wine in them, and they're like, oh, remember that time? And da da da. And they're like, oh yeah, and so and so. Like, I don't remember that part. Well, then somebody else chimes in because they remembered something. Oh yeah, then they're able to piece stories. Oh, those are some of the good ones.
You talk about stories, down at Sebring at Kegel. Imagine this. After we would do the training, we sit in the snack bar for story time, 5:30, and you got John Davis, Litchie, and the Phantom.
Oh yeah, you got two kids. And don't get me wrong, God rest his soul, Mr. Davis had some great stories, but you had two of the kings of storytelling in the Phantom and Litchie. The stories, I mean, those things go for days, and you'll never hear the same one twice. You're like,
we'd be there till midnight.
Oh, easily, yeah.
You brought up Bob a minute ago, and I snagged a picture from your Facebook that I thought was pretty cool, and we were going to chat and see if there was any info that you could give us from this. We're going to overlay it on top of the screen here for a second.
Yeah, so that was, that was had to be last year actually. That was at the Extravaganza for the Hall of Fame.
Nice.
So yeah, I just got into town. So Bill and Bob have been bowling Extravaganza for a couple of years, and I actually filled in. Last year was my first year. I was the stunt double for Chris Chartrand, as I like to refer to it. So Chartrand had come up, and so I came down there, and I just got to town, and it was the kind of the I don't know, little cocktail hour thing. They actually there at Red Rock in the down on the low. Well, it used to be back when we had the tour stops there. There used to be the part of the locker room, and the guys could practice in there, and then not affect everything happening in the center. But yeah, we went in there, and it was Bob and Wendy McPherson were in there bowling, kind of just doing. They were helping demonstrate. I don't know if you guys ever been to Extravaganza or heard about it. You're throwing a bowling ball, but it's not really bowling score. It's the high, low, odd or even. The random, each game is something different. And so those guys were the examples. So they'd have to throw the shots to help everybody there. Cause some of the people there in attendance are, proprietors or people that won the trip from their bowling center. And so they're like, okay, so we're going to do, and we had to sit there and kind of learn too. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of stuff. They're like, don't worry, we're going to help you tomorrow, but we're just kind of giving you a heads up. Like, this is how this is going to go. And it's like, but yeah, talking to Bob, Street, I like to call him Sweet Stroker. He's like a very fortunate in my career to meet a lot of great older guys, and Bob being one of them. Jowdy was another good one. Jowdy, God rest his soul. I mean, Jowdy took me under his wing early on. He used to tell me, he goes, you know what, kid? He goes, I like you. He goes, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have a job because I created that tour rep job. I'm like, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. But there was a lot of things there was a lot of little secret stuff Jowdy would teach me. But and then working at Storm, because Bob's been here, been with Bill for a really long time, and Bob's kind of like a grandpa to me. So hanging out with him over the years at different events, and it's always like I said, he's got sons and stuff like that, but and he's even got one of his he calls him his son. One of his sons, like best friends, is now living in Vegas. And, telling the story, I'd heard about this guy. And then I met him in Vegas, and he introduced himself. And he goes, so you're one of the other sons? And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, Mr. Hart talked pretty highly of you. He goes, you're one of his other sons. He goes, there aren't too many of us. There's his own son. And he goes, and then there's me. And then there's this other guy. He goes, and now there's you. He goes, so you're one of the sons. I'm like, oh, man, okay. So, yeah, I've always had that good connection with Bob. And it's always good to – again, there's another guy with stories and just experienced so much over the course of time, and that's what I really love too. Like I was talking about the old guys, Bob Hart back in the days, the Strohs team, and the stuff they did back then when bowling, those guys were beer sponsored teams, and they all had matching suits, and they drove stop to stop, and they did this and they did that. Some of the stories are phenomenal. I mean, it's
Phenomenal.
just and what sucks is, unfortunately, I'm not a big advocate for today's world of how we're handcuffed to cell phones, but man, if there was video, if people had of some of the stuff to now see it, to kind of get the behind the scenes and get all the different things, like it would be totally cool to go back. And I mean, those guys were, at the time, and here's a crazy thing to think about. At the time, they were considered higher athletes in society in America than some of the major professional sports that are to now. The NBA kind of dipped. Baseball was baseball. Football really hadn't morphed into what it is now. Hockey wasn't even, it was there, but nobody, it's kind of like, but these bowling guys are like, oh yeah, we travel this and that. And they're like, oh, the city gave us a parade and they did this. And I'm like, really? Like, oh yeah, we were there for like 4 days and we did this and this. And I'm like, that stuff doesn't happen anymore. Like that would be so cool to see,
Yeah, who was drilling their bowling balls? That would have been cool to see how their balls were drilled back then.
Yeah, well, what's funny is a lot of time Bob said once, and he's got some good stories about it. He was in the pro shop business for a long time too. I forgot the guy he went to. I'm pretty sure it was a guy in Detroit there. I can't remember his name. But as he learned, and he kind of would drill whenever he got, they give him a new ball or whatever. And that's the other thing too. Back then, these guys, man, they're toting the same ball for. He goes, oh, I used that one ball for a year and a half, 2 years. He goes, then it was kind of tracked out and it couldn't do anything. It was kind of, you'd set it so you could set it down. It'd rest on the flat spot because I worn it down so much. Those guys, he would drill them. And then there was a couple of guys they would trust, if they got to certain parts of the country that, people knew these guys that were traveling, they knew that they could go see so-and-so, and he would kind of drill balls for the whole team kind of thing. But yeah, you're right, Coach. I mean, it was one of those back in the day, and that was right. And you're going back then, man, there wasn't cover stock technology or core technology or whatever. And those guys would they'd play around with, hey, I'm going to take this logo and I'm going to spin this one like here. But still hit it over the label. But man, I had that label turned to where the E was just off the edge of my ring finger. Oh, that was the best one. I'm like, what the hell? But that's the way it was back then. I mean, that's the deal. Crazy part,
Yeah, how did you drill for a full roller with Carter? I mean, it was just crazy stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, and what's crazy? We still get that today. There's times where we get inquiries of, the common one now is how do you drill for two-handers? And then we occasionally get that deal. We actually had to create a Chad McLean and I got with Chad because Chad was our tech guy before he's morphed in. He's a director of technology stuff. We collaborated and he took the reins on and built a full roller type drilling because, for a while there, it was kind of one of those things that you didn't see a full roller for a long time. And Coach, you can probably attest to that. I mean, we had a pocket there it had to be a solid 8 years. It's like, even in all my travels, I'm like, you watching, going to pro-ams and going to events and, hey, we're going to do this and this. It's like, you didn't see a full roller or you never came in contact with one. And then all of a sudden it's like, they started popping up again. So whether it was guys came back to bowling or whatever, but we started getting that quite a bit. So we had to put a drill guide together and we still occasionally now it's probably like Kendall does the tech calls now. And it's probably, I don't know, probably one every 6 months or so. We'll get hey, I got this guy and his ball roll's funny. Can you guys help me? We're like, okay. Or, when we get customers that send pictures in, whether it's Facebook or like to my Facebook page or whatever, sometimes email. Like, hey, this guy came in and I've never drilled balls for him before and it's this and it does that. And I'm like, okay, well, this guy's a full roller, right? And they go, what are you talking about? I'm like, okay, well, you see where the oil lines are and where the ball is tracked out. They're like, well, no, I thought it was because it was laid out. I'm like, no. I said, you see that consistent spot across the 4 balls you took pictures of? Oh, I didn't see that. I'm like, yeah, that guy's a full roller. you guys haven't been helping too much. You probably need to get the corner right spot there and try and get a little something going there.
Yeah.
So,
leading into some bowling ball ideas, what balls?
Yeah, what do you got for me? What am I making next? What are we doing?
Well, my out of each brand, so out of Storm and Roto Grip, which ball from each has or was your favorite? It can be past or present. You can't include IQ, and you can't include High Road because those are obvious picks, I feel. Just for
In my bag.
Yeah, coaches that way.
You want to know what's funny about that is as long as those balls have been around, obviously the High Road's 12 plus, 12 years, and the IQ is coming up on 8 years. In my time and working on tour, even though the High Road did win quite a few tournaments, it wasn't a ball we used all that often.
Yeah.
And it still to this day is not one of those one. It's withstood the test of time because those people that have it, they drill another one. They drill another one. Or people are like, oh, hey, I've been seeing that High Road for a long time. I should probably drill one. It's what's weird is, the tour players see things a little bit different. IQ Tours, there's only a handful of guys that really like IQ Tours. Well, some guys refuse to throw them. They're like, I can't make this ball strike. Same thing with High Roads. They're like, oh, it doesn't see the lane right. Or they go, I know I'm supposed to like this ball, but I can't like it. It just doesn't work for me. And, and it's the way certain people see the lane. And and I got to give credit to some guys that you're like, hey, and before you say whatever, I drilled 4 of them. I don't like that ball. Okay, you drilled 4 of them. I understand it doesn't work. Okay, got it. But like I tell people all the time, there's a reason why we make the variety we do, because not every ball is going to work for every person. Right. There's differences in technology and stuff like that. Obviously one of the balls that really hit home and was a instant impact, which still might hold the record or tie the. I mean, something that hadn't been done in a long time. If you guys remember in 2008, and now again, when I first started, I was doing the Storm thing. The Roto Grip thing came later, even though we owned it, but still was kind of separate. Like the Roto Grip guys did their own thing because Tommy DeLutz and Leclerc and those guys kind of just did whatever. But then we kind of morphed it together. In 2008, when the Cell came out, we had the show in Fountain Valley. We had all 5 guys on the show, all 5 of them throwing a Cell. That was one of the things that all of a sudden the next week, I had everybody in my ear. I had Barnes, guys that weren't on our staff, Barnes, Walter, all these are like, hey, what's that ball about? What's up with that? Like, we saw it last week. Like, what's that thing? It's kind of one of those head scratchers. That ball was definitely an impact ball. There were some other good balls over the course of time, like all my years tour repping, balls that were, and again, it's kind of like trying to compare then to now. There's some good balls that, over the course of the lifespan of the ball. Another ball that got a lot of time for us. You got to think like La Nina, Eraser Boost, those balls made a lot of PBA telecasts. And even when I got there weren't, La Nina was kind of gone when I got out. Erasers were just kind of coming in. But the Boost, it was one of those things that as a tour rep, I'm like, well, you got this, and we could do, it's one of those things you could do some different things with, and it kind of matched up at the time what we had going on. I don't know. We've had some great balls over the years, man. It's hard. And that's the whole thing. People are like, well, what do you? And I love it, and you guys get it too. Of course, you guys bowl a little bit more than I do. I haven't bowled much now, but it was really worse. The last time I bowled, it's already been a few years ago. I threw my back out and could hardly walk, but yet I finished nationals. I think I averaged like 112 because I could barely walk to the foul line, literally for like 7 of the 9 games. But in my tour up days, people still, what ball are you throwing? What do you like? And I'm like, well, that's a bad question to ask me. 1, because I'm not bowling, and 2, I'm a guy that helps design them. There's a design purpose. There's a reason why we build what we build. But I had a stretch when I tour repped. I didn't bowl. I didn't actually throw a ball for probably 8 years. When you're in a bowling center, 40 weeks out of the year, people are like, well, what do you mean you don't bowl? I'm like, then I'm like, okay, well, I get to bowling center at 7:30, 8 a.m. Sometimes I don't leave until 10:30, and the World Series were terrible. don't leave the bowling center until 1 or 2 a.m. and then they'll be back there at 7:30 a.m. You know what? I'm gonna take that option to sleep. I'm not gonna, hey, let's go shoot up and some of the other clubs, at the time they would try and they bowl a little bit, but then we couldn't do that in the bowling center. We have to go to a different center. And some of the guys would want to go practice at other centers. It was funny. A good story I had was Texas. Actually, it was the year we had a tour stop in Texas. Dawn Hall get used to work for the PBA. And we had a good connection with her with Storm and stuff like that. She actually she just moved to Carolina. She works for the Carolina Panthers now. But she was working for the Mavericks at the time, Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban made Sports Center using the basketball and all that basketball bowling ball that we made at the time. But I bowled that Pro-Am, and I want to say that one was kind of a fun deal. I think I only beat my staff guys, I think one of the 3 games. Oh, it was Kansas City. I ended up bowling Pro-Am in Kansas City, and I beat my staff guys all 3 games. I out-averaged my guys, and it wasn't like on a house shot. It was like a modified. It was morphed of they built something that was not the house shot, but it wasn't the tour shot.
Yeah.
And I beat all 3 of my guys that came to my pair, and they're like, "You don't even bowl, and you just beat us by like 25 pins a game." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know why you guys are making this more difficult than what it is." Like, I don't know what your issue is. And I'm like, I'm nowhere near your level, dude, but like, come on.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's fun times. But yeah, I mean, bowling balls, and like I said, the cell sticks out.
That was my favorite back when I was.
I have a case of those under my desk still. That are undrilled. Yeah.
I probably drilled about cases of them, I think, back when I was on staff.
Yeah. I don't know, man. We've had even more recently. I mean, we've had some ones we've had some really good balls over the years. It's hard. I mean, like I said, there's sometimes when you put stuff together and, we even though we test it and do whatever, like, oh, this is going to be great. And then you kind of throw it and you're like, that didn't work out so good. But
Sure.
In our early days, in the early 2000s, when Storm was still on the growth spurt, we had some duds. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But, since we've figured things out and we've gone forward, it's been a long time since, we've, and there's maybe some that are kind of, for us, they're like, it's so, but you still sell a decent amount. And people that have them, if, again, given the situation, what lane surface, what lane oil, how they throw it, it's drilled the right way for them. We get all the time. People are like, hey, when are you going to bring back such and such ball? Or when are you going to bring back this ball? We're like, well, we didn't sell that many the first time, so I doubt we're going to bring it back again. But hey, we appreciate you love it, and you got 6 of them, or whatever. But yeah, it's one of those things, So it's tough, dude. That's a question you can't ask a dude that's in it, helping create stuff.
Nope. That's why I figured it would be tough.
It's you know what? It's kind of like when I get the question of who's your favorite tour player, or who's your favorite bowler.
Yeah.
Like, of your staffers, like, who's your favorite? And I'm like, well, it's like, who's your favorite kid? Like, how do you pick your favorite? You can't. It's not fair. It's I'd like and my go-to was, my favorite was whoever bowled the best and finished highest that week. That was my favorite for the week. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how else to say it. Because all guys, no matter how good the relationship, or whether it's guys or girls, how good the relationship is, they're going to be a pain in your butt at some point in time. It's going to be like, you look at them and you just like, you know what? How about you just go bowl? Let's try that for once. Let's not,
Yeah.
No silly questions, no this, no that, no excuses. Just go bowl. Just do your job.
Yeah, exactly. So. The next 2 questions that I'm going to throw at you are going to go back to back. I'm going to ask you them both, and then you can respond to both equally, whichever way you want to do it. Okay. So the one would be, what balls were or are the top sellers for Storm and Roto Grip? And then the follow-up question to that is, what is in store for the future that you could share with us for Roto Grip and Storm?
Well, I mean, I can't give you numbers, of course.
That's
but
no number.
Logic tells you that with it surviving 12 years, the high road is obviously, numbers are hard to compare when you can't. We're to the point now where we don't even consider that for like when we're trying to do comparisons and stuff like that. They're like, oh, what about for a while we could do that, but it's like. It's kind of like, can you really compare it though? Because it's 12 years in the making, and this ball's been out for 6 months.
Do you think the virtual gravity stands up there as one of the tops?
What's that?
Do you think the virtual gravity stands up there as one of the tops?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was up there. It's in the top. Trying to think where it's at. It's in the top 5. It was the number 1 there for a long time because that was one of those things. Once that ball hit, I mean, it was like. Man, everywhere you went, they were everywhere.
Yeah, they were on every rack. It seemed like back when those were released.
Yeah, when that hit its hot spot, it was one of those deals where you could walk into any league across the country, and there was anywhere from 1 to 10 of them on a rack.
Yeah, exactly.
People were like, "Hey, do you guys sell paint?" We're like, "What are you talking about?" Like, my whole team all got the same ball, and I'm going to change my logo. Can you sell me some new paint? We're like, well, you can dig that out and use like a wax, wax crayon or whatever, or you can use like model paint. I can do that. And I'm like, yeah, as long as you don't, smear it all over the cover stock. And so that was one of that was one of the times where, I was doing that. Coach, you remember that? I mean, and Drew, you probably did too back in the day. I mean, that was one of the things we used to do with old bowling balls because they weren't really sexy looking way back when. When you had everything had a white logo or maybe yellow when they really got crazy. Yeah, and I had people like, hey, hey, can you change this? So there's times where I'd dig out logos in the pro shop. I mean, I was a kid in the pro shop digging out logos and like, what color you want? You fill it in with because you used to engrave names. So you like, hey, can you make this part blue and this part purple and this part pink? Yeah, sure, whatever you want. Try $5. Okay, here's my $5. Yeah, if you can do that for me, I'll pick it up next week. All right, sweet. But yeah, whenever you get those balls that were like super hot like that, yeah, it was people like, hey, how do I change the color of the logo? But and so those balls, and obviously on the Roto Grip side, we've had some good ones over the years. Obviously, the cell is the mainstay. It was that was the reason for the virtual gravity, because it was one of those things that that was actually the thing that kind of helped start to bring Roto Grip back and put it on the map was when that ball came out, and all of a sudden the sales of that started climbing, and Mr. Crispin got a little upset about it. And he's like, why are we selling so many damn, and still to this day, it's the way Bill treats it. He created, we call him, he could be the godfather of bowling, we call him the king of this kingdom. And it's like, I created Storm from the ground up. He goes, I bought Roto Grip. Fair enough. So yeah, he was a little upset when that cell thing happened, and those ball sales started going this way, and Storm was it was doing okay, but all of a sudden those cell sales kind of going this way. Bill's like, we have a problem. I appreciate we're selling it, but this is not good for Storm, so we need to fix it. And so that was Hank's task of Hank invented the nuclear. Hank's one of the greatest ball designers of all time. He created the cell, and then it was, oh, hey, you got to come up with something. And he, did a good job there with the virtual part, that Shape Lock HD part to make it. All of a sudden that took off, and that the cell was still good, but not quite as good as that virtual. And Bill was okay with that. Bill's like, no, that's good. I like that. That's good. Keep selling the cell, but as long as that virtual keeps going this way, that's what we want. I'm like, yes, sir. Okay, sir. Yep.
And the future of Roto Grip and Storm, as much as
man, I gotta tell you, we're living in unprecedented times. And we've been around a long time, like we talked about. And you think about the way things were way back when used to be one ball a year, and then there was a couple balls a year, and then the 90s when reactive boom happened, and then it turned into the ball of the month club, and we got away from that for a while, and that was one of the things that with Roto Grip, because it got a little out of hand and crazy. That was one of the first things I implemented was I don't know if you guys remember in 2012 when I took over, I started launching balls every 6 months because I was a pro shop guy. I remember back in the day, and I'm like, man, if you don't have if you don't know what you're selling and you can't guarantee the customer what this is. And, that's kind of really part of the reason that we got Roto Grip established and back on the map, because pro shops, I was able to earn their trust with that. I just said, hey, I've been in your shoes, and let's, we'll launch 4 balls at a time, but I'm guaranteeing you I won't have a new ball for another 6 months. So I'll give you 6 months to sell those 4 balls. And pro shops all kind of got on board with it. And, over the course of time, we've made changes to our ball program and stuff too. And we, at one point in time, the VIP program was big and growing, and, we're talking years and years ago, but it was like the Storm VIP group was 600 a year, and, Roto Grip struggled to get to 100. Well, now those numbers are pretty much, they coincide. Now people are, they have no problem with bringing Roto Grip along with the Storm side, and they buy a ball program because they're like, we know Roto Grip's still going to have less releases than Storm, but the quality, and because it got to a point where after those, it was probably at least 2.5 years, all of a sudden distributors started calling Hank and then reaching out to me. They're like, hey, we appreciate the way you've done this, but man, we got people who just want more product. I'm like, okay, if you guys all agree, I have no problem flipping the other way. But I mean, it's still going to be controlled and out of the hand. And that was kind of really how it kind of moved forward from that, of how Roto Grip went away from every 6 months to then it was, announcing the stack of balls at Bowl Expo to start the beginning of the league season. And then, a couple balls every few months, kind of spreading them out. But like I said, right now, and we're kind of in unprecedented times. We're living, we're trying to, we're in the process of doing a little kick action on you guys remember that ball called the nuclear cell and the Axiom?
Yeah.
Those balls never got they barely got a heartbeat. The nuclear cell launched 1 week before everything stopped, and the Axiom actually launched on the day everything stopped. So some pro shops that are still closed, we've had communications with them. They go, hey, so I've still got my initial batch of Axioms I sold. They may have drilled 2 or 3 out of the 4 cases they ordered, and then they've been closed ever since. So those are sitting in pro shops. They're still brand new balls because there's been no competition since then. So we're just trying to feel it out. And distributors, we've had like I said, communications with them. Again, not all the distributors are open across the country. We've only got a handful of those left, and they're like just now easing back in. Some of those distributors are normally field. They've got some of them 25 employees, and they've only got 4 there now. A couple answering phones, and maybe they're pushing out maybe 10 orders a day. You don't need the full throttle with everyone there, because parts of that's what I'm saying. The weird part about everything, and it's kind of like the thing with sports and college sports and everything we have going on. Everybody's not on the same schedule. Like we talked about what it is here in Utah and how we weren't operating. You guys are still under lockdown, and you still, hey, it's coming back to normal, kind of, sort of. But, is it the example of, in some places where bowling centers are fighting, they're like, oh, you can open the doors, but you can only have 10 people in the building.
Sure.
Wait, what? How do you can't even afford to turn the lights on for that, so we're just going to try and wait and see. Obviously we've not stopped as far as technology advancements. We're always pushing, Hank and Alex Hoskins oversee the R&D stuff, and they're always working on cores, and, we're always testing new covers, and we got a lot of stuff we've been testing, and that's kind of just been our MO, for Storm and Roto Grip and pushing forward, as far as technology and advancing and doing the things we can. But at the same time, we're kind of just in the holding pattern. For the United States, that's the other thing too. You look at the other across the pond. Europe is again spotty, different schedules, but Japan and Korea, Korea's been back open for 6 weeks now, and they've actually seen a spike in ball sales. Because and that's something too that I was talking to somebody the other day, and I hit him with that, and he goes, "I didn't even look at it that way." I mean, you got to think that given whatever the new situation is unraveling moving forward, however we're going to proceed from this point. The reason sales have gone up in Korea is people are like, okay, well, I'm going to go get my own ball and own shoes. They have a lot of novice bowlers there.
Right.
But they're, instead of using house balls and house shoes, They all look at it as, well, now's the time for me to invest in my own ball and own shoes and not worry about having to touch somebody else's stuff. There's no reason that same mentality won't happen in the United States. Based on if you've got the social distancing, they're putting the guards up between, they're putting the, what's funny is the plexiglass and the dividers between the lanes. That's been in Japan and Korea for decades. Like they've been doing that forever in some places because they use those dividers to help for privacy. And they also got they got hangers on them for coats and shoes and whatever else. So they multifunction, but now having the dividers, everybody's here is freaking out like, oh, there's a wall between the pair next to me. Well, yeah, because we're trying to distance and keep everybody safe and whatever else. But how many people are gonna, there's people that enjoy bowling, even if they're not in a league that, and you guys see it coming in the center there. They come next thing they're bowling, they come bowling one time and then they start bowling twice a week and and then like, hey, I should get my own ball and bag and shoes and hey, they're bowling the Saturday night, glow bowling or whatever. And then next thing they're like, man, these people are here more than some of our league bowlers, but that's what they want to do,
Yeah.
and we're not taking that away from them. I think we just have to help them understand that, and some of these folks, I think we're going to see more people go the route of getting their own ball bag and shoes just to make it easier and just kind of a peace of mind thing, honestly. So
I think so too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we can hope anyway. We're in a spot where, like I said, moving forward, yeah, of course, we're coming up on, Bowl Expo is supposed to be here, and think of it this way, Bowl Expo is supposed to be in 4+ weeks, but that's not happening. We're the catalogs are in the final stages, and those are going to be printed, and they've got the BBIA catalog coming, and for all the brands. So we're all kind of in the same boat, but like I said, there's places that are getting back to normal, and we're even starting to see spots now starting to come up that parts of, and as you guys are, and they're in the Midwest, there's some spots in the Midwest where a lot of times the bowling center closes for the summer. They're now being forced to stay open, and they're like, hey, I'm going to open because I've lost these few months. Hell, I might as well have a ball league or do some sort of leagues. And they're like, whoa, wow, this is a lot bigger and better than what we thought it was. But it's
Right.
circumstance to what we just lived through. The fact of people have been cooped up for how many months. They're like, yeah, I'll bowl a 10-week league, or yeah, I'll bowl an 8-week league or a 12-week league. That like, hey, I didn't get to bowl my season and my league's done, but I still want to bowl. So we're seeing that transition too. Some bowling centers that are normally closed are like, you know what? Hey, I may have to start opening in the summertime now because if my schedule, again, we don't know what the future holds as far as capacities and number of people. And, how is it going to move forward with the number of people per pair spacing out? And, it may be that you don't fit a league. You may have one league, but it may have to span 2 or 3 days now or multiple shifts just to get everybody in that league. They're like, hey, I want to be a part of this league, or do you have different divisions within that league that, there's a Tuesday division, there's a Wednesday division, there's a Thursday division. We're going to have to get proprietors have to get a little creative. And again, that's going to come back on the pro shop guys to help try and be a part of that as well, because, they're doing what they can. They're cleaning stuff. They're cleaning shoes, cleaning balls, and they're going to have to put markings on the ground and dividers up. But then the pro shop guy can come in and like, hey, you know what? Why don't you? We got this package. We're running this special, and hey, and because we all know that there's. Obviously, some companies are already starting to do it, and it's a matter of, what kind of specials or sales distributor, and that's the other part too. Distributors and pro shops are in the same boat because you got to remember, come March, as we all know, everybody's gearing up for nationals, whether you're going to bowl open championship or the women's championship. You've got state tournament, you got city tournament. The kids are, got their monthly events leading up to Pepsi and then a junior gold. That was the busiest time of the season for ball sales that came to a abrupt halt of 0. So, distributors are still sitting on a lot of products. They're like, hey, we were anticipating all these balls going through for all this stuff leading forward to nationals, and, so we're all kind of in the same boat. It's kind of one of those things we're all, like I said, if we had a crystal ball and we could have predicted it, well, obviously we probably would have chosen different directions as far as releasing balls and launching balls and whatever. But like I said, the Axiom launched the day everything was shut down on March 13th. And the nuclear start was the week before that. And we're like, people are like, so what else you knew you got coming out? They're like, well, did you get a nuclear cell yet or an axiom? And they're like, no. But some people have the mentality of, well, it's not new anymore. I'm like, yeah, but did you throw one? Well, no, I haven't bowled. I haven't bowled since then. I'm like, okay, so it's still new. Because it was made at that point in time doesn't mean it's obsolete. And like I said, some of the shops that are, hey, we're still sitting on 4 cases of axioms because I was getting ready to drill them that day for customers, and then was, told by my proprietor that I had to lock the door and leave, or whatever the case was, or however it shook out. There's different situations that whole weekend. So, yeah. So I wish I could give you a better answer as far as the future, but unfortunately, I can tell you, like I said, we haven't stopped in the overseas market. That market has been pushing forward as we've been going along, and we're still going to keep doing things for them because they're still selling balls. Like I said, we're seeing a spike, especially Korea. Japan just had a deal. They just reopened this past week. Their prime minister. What's funny I don't know if you guys follow international stuff, but their prime minister, when they started to kind of see a subtle second wave, the prime minister wanted to shut down like their 7 major cities. He wanted to lock them down for like 6 months. Like, oh, we're going to go back. We're shutting them down for 6 months. The government talked them into. They agreed to 3 months. Well, we'll put these 7 spots, the major spots, and back in lockdown. Well, then it turned out they made it like 4.5 weeks, and now all of a sudden Tuesday, he's like, yep, lifted the stay at home. Let's go. We need to get Tokyo, everything fired back up. Let's go. Here we go. So they're back wide open, and our distributor there just like, hey, so we're back open. We haven't really discussed much of orders, but we're thinking we're going to see how these next week and a half goes. But we may place orders for for them. They've missed out in Japan, especially. They may be ordering 2 months or 2.5 months worth at a time, because they are going to hope. They're thinking they may see the same thing as Korea, see that spike in. There's plenty of bowling centers in that country, and they see a lot of open play because a lot of people there in Japan, it's different. Coach, I don't know if either one of you guys have been there, but it's nothing to go see middle of the day. You walk into a bowling center, and there's 60 people dressed in suit, shirt, and tie, and the ladies with the dress shirts on and dresses. They go bowl in their lunch hour. Like, they don't even eat lunch. They go straight to the bowling center. They bowl as many games as they can bowl, and then they go back to work. So you have all those batches of people that, they're just going to go buy their own ball, bag, and shoe. So we should see an influx in that, in that type of that demographic is what we're thinking. So, yeah.
Right.
Man, we've enjoyed our long stint of 2 and almost a half hours now.
Wow.
Hard to believe.
How do you break this up? Do you break this up into like 9 different segments? Is that what we're going to do here?
They might have to. Surprised Facebook hasn't told us to go away.
Dude, I tell you what, there's times when I do Facebook Live where I can make them short and sweet. And there's times where, and even if you start kind of talking about stuff and you're communicating with people, there's the times I'm like, oh, get on Facebook for a while. And the next thing I look down, I'm like, oh, it's been an hour and 45 minutes. And, I've still got like 15 questions in the queue. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to save these for another time. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But
yeah, we've enjoyed our time. That's been awesome.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for thinking of the fat kid, the fat little stepbrother out here in Utah. Because usually the storms, it's pretty funny though. I just got a message last night from, you guys know Lee Sant with Boulder X. Lee hit me up. He's like, Schlem, he goes, I need you to, same kind of thing as you guys. We're like, hey, he goes, I just want to talk about bowling and how you got into bowling and this and that. And I'm like, okay. Now I can give him a heads up. Like, hopefully you reserve like 2.5 hours is what we're going to need to discuss the history of bowling.
We had a great time. I'm just so glad that you recovered from that little period and everything's good. You're healthy, and everything's going to be great. Here, move forward with you, buddy.
That's it, man. Yeah, like I said, it morphed into a whole new hairstyle, everything. Yeah, it is what it is. It's Coach got the same thing going on, man. You got a little, like I said, you keep growing that mullet out, man. I'm telling you, I've been thinking about bringing it back, but I just shaved all my stuff back off again. But I'm like,
yeah. Well, you knew back in the mullet days. I may go mullet, so you never can tell.
Hey, I had a mullet until I was about 12 and a half. My dad swore up and down that he invented the mullet. But then, like me and my buddies that played baseball and basketball and stuff, we all had the same hairstyle, and it was just like, it was funny. It was like, and my dad always had long hair, and now he does a deal where he still grows it out. Like now it's all down past the shoulders, and then he'll cut it off and they'll donate it for the Locks of Love stuff. And so he'll shave it bald and then he'll grow it all back out. But at the time, he had never cut his hair. It's like always had the mullet going. And yeah, he came home. I'll never forget. I had my buddies. There was like 2 buddies that went and cut their mullet off, and all the rest of us on the team were like, "Well, dude, what'd you do that for?" I mean, we're like 7th grade. We're like, "Dude, what'd you do that for?" Like, "Oh man, saw this dude on TV." I'm like, so like all of us went. Like we all go to the same barbershop. So within like 3 days, the whole team, we all went and got the same haircut. And my dad came home and he looked at me and he goes, "What the hell did you do to your head?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Did one of these deals?" He's like, "What happened to your hair?" I'm like, "I cut it." "The hell'd you do that for?" I'm like, "Because the other guys did." He goes, and of course, the age-old thing, they jump off a bridge, going to jump a bridge. I'm like, "Well, I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
His hair is going to grow back." But my dad thought it was a criminal sin for me to cut my hair. He's like, "I can't believe you did that." I'm like, "Dad, it's just hair. It's going to grow back." So, but yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'll let this grow out into a mullet. I'll join Coach there. Get the little ponytail going on. Yeah.
It's been fun, buddy. Oh my gosh.
All right, guys.
Can't wait to see you again at some point as far as in person. So it'll be good.
Yeah, who knows? I need to get back to the Midwest there with Doan always wants me to come out. And I go, "Doan, I've got to go hang out with other salesmen. I can't just go out with you like 4 times a year." He goes, "Yeah, but I've got so these places to go." I'm like, "Dude, I get it, but they're also like Hank and I, we got to kind of spread out, and we can't always be gone from the office because again, we've got all this other stuff going on.
Yeah.
You can't just like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to leave for a month and just go travel."
No doubt.
But it doesn't help us very well,
No. All right, man.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy the rest of your year coming up, and hopefully things kick up a little bit faster than what they've been as far as business going here anyway.
Same for you guys. Hopefully, I just want to see you guys get out in the real world. There, by the way, just nothing really changed outside. I mean, you can still see the sky's blue, and they still have stores and restaurants. And hell, here we're already getting back to movie theaters being open and in small stages. We had drive-ins; those are making the big comeback. I'm sure you guys are seeing the same thing. But sports are coming here. You're getting the sports kind of ironed out, figured out. So don't worry, the world's still moving. You guys just got to get out those doors and just kind of get it going again. So,
well, I think the barbers, all the salons have opened today, so I think I'm going to try to get in line and get a cut. Probably have to wait for tomorrow, but we'll see how it works, buddy.
Yeah, I honestly, if you could wait, because so the girl that normally, like I said, the girl that normally does mine, she's been swamped, and I got lucky there in the place, like I said, by my house. I went to a Sports Clips, and
me too.
I walked in legit because they had 6 girls cutting hair and no wait. Walked in, they're like, "Oh, yeah, you're next. Come on, sit down." Like literally walked in the door, went and sat down. I said, "Hey, how was it last week?" And the girl goes, "We were a 3-hour wait for the first 4 days."
Oh, wow.
She goes, "So you did a good job by waiting." I said, "Well, you guys are really just a last-ditch resort for me because I'm just like, my hair's driving me nuts and I need to get a cut." I said, "I'll wait for my girl to get back to normal." And the girl's like, "Okay, cool." And the one girl who I'd known, she's like, "You haven't been here in like a year." She goes, "I looked you up in the book." I'm going, "Yeah, I've been going to this other girl. She can color it and cut it all at the same time." And da-da-da. She's like, "Okay." I said, "Yeah, but she's like backed up like 3 weeks, 4 weeks." I'm like, I made it this long. I made it like 65 days. But like when I started had to put in stuff in, because it just, my hair is naturally thick and curly. So like it started like going this way. So I had to put product in my hair to like make sure it goes back this way, because otherwise I just had all like it looked like I had a ring sticking on the back of my head, and I'm like, yeah, it's got to go.
Gotta go.
Yep. So
I
appreciate it. And anything you guys need anything from us, as far as, you guys have probably already seen. I know you guys have been putting up the new balls, the electrifies, hustles, and stuff like that. Those are coming in a few weeks. I will tell you, we will have the crazy eights up on the website, but you guys are still in a weird spot as far as we're not shipping those ball. Well, you don't get the hustles, but the electrifies become in part of the VIP thing. But like the mailer stuff, like crazy eights and all that different things, we're gonna hold that off until we get the catalogs. Probably be like mid-July kind of thing, because we had a lot of bowling centers that still aren't open. So it's like, hey, if we send out, we could send Crazy Eights now, but we'd get, east of the Mississippi, we'd get almost all those back. So it's
Gotcha.
doesn't make sense, to get them to that. So, but anyway, we'll be doing mailers probably. Like I said, we're going to hold off. We're finishing the catalogs; those get printed, and then we'll get those sent out. Crazy Eights and all that stuff in a kind of a big bundle. Probably that second week of July, I think, is what we're looking at probably.
Sweet.
So,
Sweet.
all righty.
All righty.
Yeah, but like I said, you guys got anything for us or need anything, just holler. We're, like I said, we're in the office every day. So, we're functioning. And as we've been on this call for 2.5 hours, I've got my ad agency sending stuff, and we're working on, I'll give you guys a sneak insight. I didn't want to say it in front of the world. Actually, you guys, this is still part of the world. You can delete this part out, right?
No, it's live.
Oh, you're killing me, man. All right. Well, I'll just say it. We're actually working on a new website for Roto Grip. So we've got that kind of content. So we're working on some stuff there as well. So, it'll be just some different things going on. So like I said, we're continuing to work, and we're doing what we got going on. So, but
Awesome.
I won't get into the detail what else happened. I'm just saying that, it's been since we built the new website. That was already back in, it's hard to believe Logic says it's not that long ago, 2011, but it is 2020. So technology does advance as far as computers and all that fun jazz, cell phones, whatnot. So yeah, we're gonna do some stuff,
Nice.
because that's really the big thing, obviously when you get on a phone, because that's where we see a lot of people, a lot of traffic coming through. So ours is not, we have Roto Grip currently has a static website. So we obviously with the new formulation, it'll be one of those deals where it makes it more user friendly when you're on a phone. As people come into your shop, as you guys see all the time, people are like, oh, hey, they're on their phone playing around. If you guys mostly have, TVs and all that stuff in your bullish bar shops, but not every pro shop has that. And so customers are always on their phone looking for info. So Roto Grip's we're going to move into that zone where we have the user friendliness on a cell phone. So
nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
Yep. Yeah.
Sweet.
So
all right, brother.
All right, guys. Well, again, appreciate it. Best of
Definitely.
luck. Everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe. Just all we can do is keep living life and moving forward. Social distance, wash your hands. All the things we should have done before. But hey, we've now graduated hand washing 101. I think we all got our. I think the president sending the certificates in the mail to everyone. You've now self-quarantined. You now learn how to wash your hands, so you can now go back as a free-range chicken again. So here we go.
Great to see you, buddy.
Good seeing you.
You guys. Take care of yourselves.
We'll
All right?
You too.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.
Well, how fun was that?
A ton of fun. Holy cow.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I'm glad that he's doing okay, and he's just such a knowledgeable and funny and stories. This is a great show.
It was definitely long, but it was it never felt like it was long. And we hope that everybody gets enough info out of this and sees how great of a guy this guy is. He's put in a lot of years of hard work on the PBA and PWBA and in the industry of storm and other facets, and really appreciate for what he's added into the industry. So
yeah, he's a real credit.
Yep. But that's it for us. We are going to head out, and we will talk to you guys again soon.
Okay.
See ya.